So I get on the road here botching the intro of Living Off Borrowed Time, the most punctual podcast in the world.
Correct.
Internet. So this is Living Off Borrowed Time, the most punctual podcast on the internet. Last time we joined you with a podcast that was a year late, and now we're joining you with a podcast that's only 6 months late. From when I last announced it. Those frequent listeners who remember the Roots episode, the Cheat Codes episode. I'm doing great with this already. I announced that there would be a Backwoodz Studioz episode with frequent guest Thoughtfoul, and that was in October, and now we're in March, and it kind of really worked out serendipitously because since that episode was announced, they've dropped even more stuff that kind of gave us even more to talk about. So, Thoughtfoul, welcome back.
Thank you.
We discussed Mr. MFing eXquire, and kind of going to be a bit of a tonal shift on this one from the horniest rapper of all time to Aethiopes. And
Living off borrowed time, the clock ticks faster. Living off borrowed time, the clock ticks faster. Living off borrowed time, the clock ticks faster. Living off borrowed time, the clock living off borrowed time, the clock tick faster. Living off borrowed time, the clock tick faster. Living off borrowed time, the clock tick faster. Living off borrowed time, the clock tick
I mean, I suppose Sketch and eXquire have something in common, which is alcohol.
Right.
But beyond that, and they're also really, really good projects. So I actually think that eXquire probably. I mean, has he shown up on any in their circle at all?
The closest I can think of is like
crossover, but
yeah, it's more like he'd be on like an AJ Suede project, which is like a Wrecking Crew affiliate, which is they're affiliates with Backwoodz, so it's like there's almost some kind of connection. But
that there's been such a ripple effect from what Backwoodz has done over the past year, but really since their inception. But I don't think he's directly shown up. But yeah, you were on the eXquire episode, obviously. One of my favorite episodes, our Rock Marcy episode.
Mm-hmm.
Again, another rapper with incredible influence who has shown up with Billy Woods before. So, something that we won't touch on that did show up in their year was The History Will Absolve Me 10th anniversary reissue. By the way, if any listeners want to show their appreciation for our podcast as it approaches the 100th episode, a great gift to give me would be Absolve Me issue with the essay book. That would be a really nice thing to buy me. I will give you my address if you don't abuse it, and please send me that. Gifts will be. I accept grift. I accept graft on this podcast. No one has actually done any of the t-shirts I've solicited. So gifts, come on, cough it up. Fucking cough it up. We're not doing the Patreon, so that was very hard to get. I know you were able to score one of the church issues with the lyric sheet. We will be consulting the lyric sheet when we talked about church. There were only, I believe, 100 of the History Will Absolve Me reissues that essay book. I have not seen it. I'm really curious as to what Billy wrote about that and his process there. It looks like a really beautiful issue, but we won't be talking about that. We'll go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to ask, do you know what the book is called? Because I feel like there was some book being sold at the merch table when I was at the, spoiler alert, at the Armand Hammer show.
Shit. It might be on Discogs. I think it's on Discogs for some absurd. It might be on Discogs for some absurd ass price.
Probably.
I'll look it up later. We're not doing a great radio right now. Thumb through stuff, but that I believe is the only thing that they released this year that we will on the past year that we won't be talking. There was one Akai Solo single. I think it's just the single off the album. I think it's an album track that was released. Other than that, we'll be covering everything they released in 2022 through to the sketch album in 2023, past month. He left the swim back, plus as well the cult favorite reissue, not on Backwoodz, but I think very relevant to their output. And I don't believe, well, White Label was on Backwoodz technically, and none of us are supposed to have it really, unless it's a show. But I kind of think they knew it was going to get out there. And when we talk about it, I feel like it's part of their whole plan. Like, there's no way they did not that was going to leak out. And given what they put on that record, I think it was kind of part of their. It was kind of them laying a blueprint, as it were, for like a taster for, because given the songs on there, it was like breadcrumbs for what was coming out for the year. So before we start, anything you want to say about the label, the experience with Billy, Elucid, the artists, going into things? Any kind of preamble?
Well, I suppose, like, in terms of my introduction, I think the first time I actually heard Billy Woods would have been on the Vaudel Mega album, Mega Graffiti. He's on like a bunch of songs on that, including one where he rhymes over an LP beat. And then I think somehow I stumbled onto Cult Favorite in like it might have even been 2012 or 13, and that was like my introduction to Elucid.
You were real ahead of the curve on that. I mean, I got into Woods. I'm sure I covered this on one of the Armand episodes via Passion of the Weiss. Zilla Rocca's excellent write-up. It was either Zilla Rocca or Small Pro. I've forgotten the time. Probably Zilla. Zilla started writing for them before Pro did, about Dour Candy. That hooked me because I try. Actually, no. I think they wrote about history of. Somebody wrote. It was either Weiss or Zilla wrote about history of what was all. I mean, went over my head. I'm a fucking moron. I'm sure I listened to the Marcion album. Was like, this guy sounds like Raekwon. He's boring. Right. And then says the guy who thought that Ka sounded like off-brand DMX on Pro Tools. I've never let myself live that down. So history of Resolve went over my head, but then Dour Candy did not, because they wrote that up. Like, I owe this a second chance, and I love Blockhead out the gate. So obviously Dour Candy really resonated with me, and then from then on out, just was hooked on Woods. Cult Favorite, I have another shitty review of. Speaking of my off-brand DMX comment, I mean, I gave it a positive write-up, but I said the instrumentals lacked character, which is bullshit. Character. I need to revise that review badly. I was not up on Cult Favorite until years after the fact, like a lot of stuff. But I do think, I mean, we'll get to the Cult Favorite stuff at the very end. But Woods, my history with Woods, I think, has been covered extensively in the Armand episodes. So basically, I think going into this year, pretty much my favorite rapper, and along with Wrecking Crew and Makhami, God Fahim, Yoral Droog, Dump God, Your New Religion, whatever collective you want to call them, probably my favorite collective going, those three. And so, but this year I think has really elevated them to new level. Like, I feel like if you look at our year-end episodes, pretty much every year's had something by Billy Woods in it. And this past year, you could make, like, as we go through this episode, there's like 5 contenders for something you could put in the year end involving Billy. I had Church as my honorable mentions, like best honorable mention. And by the time I got done this episode, I'm like, I think it's almost Aethiopes equal. Like, there's a bit of spoiler right there. My estimation of that has gone from a 9 to I'd probably 10 out of 10, 5 stars, say it's equal. I know previous guest, Makhami expert, he hates me calling him that, King Aaron, Horns, whatever, thinks it's better than Aethiopes. He's the only one I know who holds that opinion, but I'm getting there with that, actually. I really am. But we'll talk about that when we talk about that. So, enough preamble. They started the year with, from an album from the last year, speaking of Wrecking Crew, Premrock put out Load Bearing Crow's Feet on Backwoodz, and they started the year with the deluxe edition of that, which had the single Bardo, which featured Billy Woods as the bonus track at the very end. And that's an excellent album. But beyond the purview of the podcast to cover that, sorry to be long enough. But I think this single might just be better than anything on it, and that's why they chose to start the year with it. It's just kind of a statement. I mean, also considering the Shrapknel album was going to come out. So, again, intentional, everything. I was listening to Call Out Culture, the podcast about the Shrapknel album. I didn't get very far in, and unfortunately, I thought they did one on the Elucid on Bessie. They did not do a liner notes on that, but they did. So I ended up kind of listening to the Shrapknel one a little bit, and Curly was talking about how they had a secret plan where after the previous Shrapknel album, the solo projects were intended to be like sister, like both companions to that and sister projects to each other, and there was always a secret plan. I think this was the beginning of the quote unquote secret plan, I don't know, for the year and for everything, for like, you know, laying out Wrecking Crew's year and also for Stalking Horse for the Shrapknel album and for Billy's work as well. All the themes, recurring motifs for the year and everything, which would be a lot of, spoiler, they're talking about death. Like, I mean, it's in there in the title. Like, mortality. Yeah. I mean, it's in the title of fucking Prem's album, too. Like, it's the recurring. But just everything about it. Like, no disrespect to Prem, though. He gets washed here. Billy, don't... There are two rappers, at least, you don't invite on your album unless you're just going to just forfeit your album. And those are Def C and Billy Woods.
Correct. Yeah.
Even if you're Premrock. Sorry.
Yeah.
And this Billy album... this Billy verse, the narrative details, the story of the death of a relationship, it somehow blows it up to just, you could extrapolate so much out of this. The little details become just crushing the accumulation over the course of this verse. The thing about Five Guys just kicks you in the balls.
Yeah, it's like really gripping. I remember the first time I heard it, I was like, holy shit. But I just love as well, like how there's kind of the turn at the end where the ex-girlfriend say something like, I listened to your music, I didn't get it, any of your friends black, and then he says, it's my turn to laugh, and then he basically leaves. Like, I just felt like that was like just a really amazing ending to such an incredible song. And then he goes to the strip club and says he's tipping strippers because he's cheap or whatever. It's just like, the detail of just like this one particular evening where he's been reunited with his ex-girlfriend. It's just like, it's really incredible. You're right. Such an amazing way to start the year. And also need to also big ups Evidence for that beat, because that beat is an absolute monster, and Evidence is like very underrated behind the boards. So I was really glad to see that there was like that connection there with Evidence, you know, helping out Wrecking Crew and by extension Backwoodz.
Yeah, Evidence is somebody that I'm not super into as an MC, but I think he's a great producer. I mean, like, he's fine as an MC. Like, I've liked some Evidence verses. I mean, I'm like in the middle on him as an MC. Like, I don't strongly dislike anything he's really done, but I think as a producer, he's uniformly very good, and that's probably my favorite beat of his. That beat's really emotive and really appropriate for it. I think that the hook, such as it is great out of Prem. I think Prem's really underrated. Well, I mean, Prem's underrated in everything. Like, I mentioned Prem, they're like, oh, that's the problem. Like, I feel like, even in terms of Shrapknel, like, I think he's known more as a group artist in that way. Like, that got him some notoriety, but I think necessarily as a solo artist, people were checking for him even after that. So, yeah,
I mean, his hook in the song is incredible too.
Yeah, I think that's part of. We'll get to this when we talk about Shrapknel. Shrapnel. I don't know how should we pronounce that, by the way?
I say it's Shrapknel, but yeah, I guess overall's fine.
Shrapknel, right? But I don't know if you're supposed to like put in. And I was just listening to the fucking podcast about it too. I should have processed how they're pronouncing the name of their own group. But I feel like that's part of the contrast that really makes him and Curly work together. Is like, aside from the relaxed flow versus Curly's more immediate flow, is that Prem has the melodic sensibility he can deliver a hook versus Curly, who just really attacks everything. So I think they kept this in the pocket for a good reason. I think they could have obviously. I don't know when this was recorded. I don't think it was recorded yet, but I think there was a purpose to saving this for the beginning of the year. Like,
absolutely.
So we move
5 out of 5 song, basically. Let's leave it at that.
Worth buying if you were going to buy the digital version of this for whatever reason, and you have like a few extra dollars. It's worth buying the CD. I mean, it's worth buying the CD anyway. It's worth buying the CD to have this issue. It's worth buying that issue to have this song. So, moving on from there, we have Duncecap and Hajino. Another thing I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing properly. Go Climb a Tree. I own this because I like the shirt that came with it. A shirt I'm not allowed to wear because my wife finds the back of it obscene. I'm allowed to wear it around the house, but that's about it.
Nice.
It's a cool shirt, though. I mean, another callback to the previous episode is in Backwoodz merch, upsetting my wife would be the Haram cover, but that upset a lot of people, as it should have.
Right.
But off the pigs. So anyway, so I owned this album for a while and didn't really listen to it because I just liked the shirt. And I'm like, I paid for the shirt, and I didn't really have any interest in listening to a Duncecap album. I don't know why. Like, I don't know if I'd heard him before this. It was just like, I think I got him confused with Doof, to be honest with you. Like, quirky MC. And it was just like, I'm sure he's cool. Like, he's on Backwoodz. I'm sure he's not bad. But then in research the episode, I'm like, I should probably listen to this album I paid money for, right? I mean, I paid money for the shirt, but I had the album. And very good. Very good album. Like, honestly. Like, easy to put in the bucket of, like, a quirky MC, like, Darko, Paul Barman type thing. But what I get out of this is Hellfire Club era type thing. Like Mike Eagle, Bus Driver, Milo, not Rap Ferrara, key difference. In terms of like production, there's like a Daedalus vibe to the production a little bit. I think just raps that are relatable, but not overwhelmingly beating you over the head with their cleverness. If I had to think of an analog, again, Wrecking Crew, Andrew. I know he's not for everybody, but Andrew in sort of like the everyday struggle things. You got like Cha-Ching, reminds me of Check to Check by Mike Eagle in terms of struggle that anybody who has had to live through financial hardship should be able to relate to. And I think that it was a great choice of a name feature to put Quelle at the very end, because I think those two are real kindred spirits. That's the best track on there, and I think
I was looking at too, actually.
Go ahead. Sorry. No, go.
I was just going to say I agree with you on the Quelle Chris thing, and being on there. That made so much sense to chuck them on the end, because they're both the kind of like, I guess, like quirky MC, maybe sort of in the vein of like, maybe would you say there's any like relation with like Quasimodo type material, or
a little bit? I mean, again, like there are quasi tracks like Low Class Conspiracy, MHB, Mr. Two-Face. Like there's stuff in quasi albums. I think kind of painted as he's from outer space. He's just this wackadoo dude. Right. But really, if you think about the quasi albums, I always thought of them as just like Madlib coping with like his albums by inventing this other persona, like way to deal with everyday problems. Like they're really just it's not like fan fiction, and it's not like, you know, some sort of Cool Keith Dr. Octagon situation. So I don't think really that's like esoteric so much. And like, I don't know, kind of and that sort of thing. If you like that sort of shit, I think this album has a lot to offer. His voice isn't a deal breaker in the way something like Darko or Barman could be for people. I think his voice is pretty easy to take. It's not the most it's not like Prem's voice or something where super melodic, just to come back to something we just talked about. But and also I think that I think it's a soft introduction to a lot of the themes. Like, I think it's funny that we start the year with him and end the year with Sketch. Like,
two very opposite ends of the spectrum.
But they're still kind of talking about the same stuff, like working class struggles, just from two different spectrum. Yeah, and it's just another reminder that there's actually a lot of versatility on the Backwoodz label. You know, people probably think it's all this like kind of, you know, like dark social commentary type stuff, which, you know, we'll get into later, isn't actually the case. A lot of Armand Hammer and stuff is quite funny. But yeah, this is more that kind of quirky, maybe more accessible side. And, you know, with like actually quite pretty instrumentals as well. I don't think I've really heard any of this production before. So Hajino's the producer, right? I hadn't heard any of their beats before. I hadn't heard of him at all. He's got a few beat tapes that now I need to give us some of that patented borrowed time great radio as my tablet went off. But yeah, he had go on the tree. Yeah, he has two beat tapes that I've looked into since How I Swing Volume 1 and Hit from 2021, Hidden Knowledge from 2020. Both are excellent. Both a little bit different than this. This, again, I feel like is closer to Riley Lake on Toothpaste Suburb. I think it's close to Bus Driver on Perfect Hair type thing. Just a little bit like a little bit electronic, but also Project Bloat style. Those are a little more on the jazzier end, but still in the same ballpark. So yeah, he's excellent. I recommend checking those out. They're on Bandcamp and also on Spotify. So definitely look into those. But yeah, I feel like they're not that far off though. Again, like he's kind of the themes of the artists on the label are all the same. It's just the way I feel like everybody is talking about the same issues, the same struggles in the macro, but in the micro, they just have completely different ways of approaching them, which keeps it from being like monochrome. And they're all just so good at it and so individual. Like even Billy and Elucid. Like, I mean, think about the pairings, Billy and Elucid, Shrapknel. They're, what makes them great is their different approaches. So, and yeah. And Sketch. Like no other label has anybody like Sketch either.
No. Yep, it's one of one. Also, another thing about this album as well is features are very well placed. There was like a very good Googie verse. I quite like the Akai Solo verse as well. It had some interesting wordplay that was about like, you know, their references to Earl Sweatshirt and stuff like that. So yeah, all that stuff is really well placed. And also there's that skit where he calls someone up and he's like, drop some wisdom. Is that Billy Woods he's talking to? Do you know?
I don't know who he's addressing on that. Because he doesn't give a name. Speaking of words, the one track, the broccoli cheddar something bowl track, I don't have it off the top of my head. I could again look at the album, but it's broccoli cheddar
bread bowl. Yeah, I'm looking at it now.
Wordplay type track in the Count Basie Doom vein, especially like that took 2 or 3. Like on my second listen, I picked up on a lot more double meanings than on the first. So I think that another one where like there's more going on, but more going on under the surface than just goofiness on some stuff here. But there's also goofiness too. Like again, it's the silliest thing they put out all year, but it's certainly not purely silly. And I think, yeah, I went under the radar. Like looking at the 27 ratings.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
Yeah.
Also, the shirt's cool. I wish I could wear it more often, but kind of looks like dwarfs have dicks on the back, and my wife don't like that.
Yeah.
So moving forward from there.
White Label, I think, is the next one.
White Label, yeah. Okay, so White Label. This only was available at the European shows, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And it sold out at the...
Yeah, that sounds right.
Oh, I believe. So if you have this, I have a kidney for you, which I only have one. I don't part with that one. So what here showed up on other stuff? Obviously, Sardonyx.
So I was looking at this. Sardonyx, Artichoke, I think.
Artichoke showed up.
There's one more. Windbreaker. No, not Windbreaker.
Although Windbreaker has the best verse on here, I believe. Windbreaker is nuts. Windbreaker is a top 20 Billy.
Is that the one when he's talking about owning a gun? Or is that recent? Maybe it's recent at the end. He has a verse where he's like, I've only owned a gun once, is like the opening line, and then he's kind of talking about having this gun on him.
I don't know. I really don't want to bring up Genius right now, but I'm pretty sure that where he tells a personal story, and I think that's like maybe he. Also, Windbreaker is the Beast by Locust, which I don't even know if I can bring up a credit for him. The thing is, one of the things
Locust is on the Wrecking Crew album on Sedale Threat. He had a beat on there.
Seb Bash showed up on here, who I'm familiar with, and Seb Bash is the only, I believe, and somebody can fact check me on this, the only person who has a tape out on Alchemist label who is an Alchemist.
Oh, true. Crazy.
Yeah, that tape is fucking awesome. It's called like Customs or something. It's a really, really fucking good beat tape. I highly recommend it.
Oh, nice.
And see why you have 2 Earl beats on here.
Yeah, and they're pretty weird. I feel like, did you find, I don't know if it's because this is a vinyl rip, but do you feel like a lot of these songs are like quite skeletal instrumentally comparative to other Armand Hammer material?
I feel like there's a lot here that, I mean, I made comparisons in my review to like Pepper Tree and what was the other one off of Haram that was super fucking scary? Not Pepper. It was at the very end. Do
you mean the one before the pig references in it with Quelle Chris, or the other one? Chicharrones, maybe? Is that
Chicharrones was the Quelle track. That's also another skeleton one. But like I feel like it has a lot in common with those sort of Armand tracks. More so than like I feel like this is generally Yeah, I feel like the vinyl rip aspect of it has something to do with that, but I feel like generally it's just like a dumping. Dumping ground feels pejorative, but I don't want to be pejorative about it. I feel like it's where the weirder stuff went, essentially, which is where, I mean, everything about it. I'm looking at the art, like white label, the abbreviation of the title, the way it was distributed, and again, I feel like their internet's obviously this is going to get out there, and the dissemination of it, like. Even some of the titles, 2TNS Wi-Fi, clever. This is supposed to be where the dark, weird shit goes. And I think it's better than Half Measures. I think it's super interesting. There's obviously nothing bad on here. There's nothing better than any Armand record. And there's just stuff here you get that you don't get. You get fucking Armand Hammer mugs.
I know, yeah. And it's like a very, it's surprisingly, it's not that dark of a mug speed. It's more like it's quite soulful from memory.
I'd like to know how that happened and why we don't have more with them. Again, in terms of presaging stuff we're going to see throughout the year, we have Jeff Markey shows up for the first time this year. Not the obviously. One thing that I didn't get to for this episode, which would have been outside the purview of the episode, was Fielded is on the Markey song. The Fielded album. For that?
Yeah, that's from 2021 though, I think. I did look this up. Because again, it's another thing that's got like 15 ratings or something, and it's probably really good.
And it's on Spotify, and I've always meant to get to it, and I never have. It's one of those things that's sort of like Soundtrack's album with some it's like the only album Soundtrack produced in full until the Lupe album last year, which was with who the fuck was it? Now I gotta look that up too. Like there are always these weird albums with like side artists that I want to see, and then they come out and I never get to them because Field has always done great stuff on the Armand projects, and then this happens and I never get around to it. But Halloween Fall on a Weekend is like, it sounds literally like it's the title.
Yep.
Like in terms of the beat, like it's so autumnal. It's so like you can hear the leaves on it, and it's absolutely perfectly suited for Elucid too.
Yep. Yeah. Actually, just on the topic of Elucid, so he opens the album with Codex.
Oh, yeah, he opens the album, doesn't he?
And he opens it by saying, "Suck me till I'm dead." And I was thinking about this. Is Elucid on his way to competing with Mr. Motherfucking eXquire in terms of references to getting his dick sucked? Because he raps about it a lot, if you pay attention.
A lot of ways. You could take it "Suck me till I'm dead" that way. You can also take it "Suck me till I'm dead," like "Suck my life force till I'm dead" too. Like just suck my blood dead. Yeah. Which goes with a lot of the like just death. Like this is things getting bleak real quick in Backwoodz land after the Duncecap album.
Yeah.
We were going to climb a tree. That tree was full of dead leaves. The branch off that shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also another recurring theme we get with the Backwoodz albums is strong endings, strong second halves. Like, I mean, strong with like strong everything, but I would say really strong starts out the gate, challenging middles, and strong endings. Yeah. Like in terms of structure.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, this is like 35 minutes, pretty dense listen, I think. I just also want to mention as well, Topsy has one of the weirdest August Phenom beats I've heard. I mean, August Phenom, often gets weird, but that one's just like, it's full of like backmasking and shit. It's just really quite like just orienting into that one. There's also a very pretty Messiah music beat on this, I think Saturday, maybe. Yeah, but I don't know.
Quote myself on my review for Topsy is the beat makes Patrique look like it has commercial potential.
Right, yeah.
Patrique not exactly knocking down Dua Lipa on the top 40. So
in a perfect world, though.
We can dream. Yeah, but I think the best thing on that, like, yeah, from Halloween Fell on a Weekend to Resin is as good as anything on any Armand Hammer. And I would say that Artichoke through to Tienis Weefy is as weird as anything on any Armand Hammer. So
yeah, weirdest hook as well, because the way that Elucid like raises the pitch of his voice when he says Weefy as well is like,
Tienis
I don't know, quite interesting to hear. Yeah,
I would say if you're looking
go on.
From something else you might have heard had you not checked this out, it's definitely and I don't know if I made this hackiest comparison in my review, Untitled Unmastered for Armand Hammer, but different though, because I mean Kendrick did reappropriate, and I'm going to go to Kendrick again when we talk about Aethiopes. Oh my god, I can't believe I mispronounced that badly. It's like saying Kendrick did reappropriate a little bit on his album, but I feel like this was more of a roadmap where they were going for the year than what Kendrick was doing with Untitled Unmastered, which was more just kind of taking past stuff and recontextualizing. Whereas this is more like a roadmap of where they intended to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What can you remember what track it is where Woods has a line where he says something about kicking his son out for smoking mids or something like that?
Is that?
It's just, I don't know, just a very funny line. It's just a reminder that he says some very funny shit sometimes that I think people just miss.
I wish I could fucking remember. I want to say it's the Alchemist song, but I can't remember. It's either it's either the Alchemist or Monk's track. But yeah, Woods is super funny, and one of the reasons I think I love Woods as a rapper is his ad libs too. Like he's got the same way ad libs that like Dipset had. Like if you listen to Woods tracks, and this is on Aethiopes too. A very, very serious album. He will be throwing back at himself. Although he does it more in church. He like throws back at himself on ad libs all the time. Same quality he has, where he's just all playing with himself on the ad lib track, like using that as his own echo chamber. Like he'll use that to give himself a punchline or an audience. So
yeah, I think there's one of the ad libs I think on Haram when he's like, no, don't do it, like that kind of shit. He does every now and then as well, which it's pretty funny, even though it's like he'd say after something very bleak.
Or on church, I don't know the track off top, but he talks about how he didn't flush the haze, and then he's like, threw it out the window. Yeah,
it's great. But I was late for this. It took me a long time to actually listen to White Label. Probably just because I just was, I don't know, was being a millennial and not using SoulSeek when I should have. But yeah, very, very good overall. I'm glad I finally got to it. If you do want to hear the songs that are on the other projects, just do listen to them there because they're in better quality, obviously. But definitely worth checking out regardless. And it's 35 minutes, so it's, in and out.
It's also, like there's certain stuff that is just, I mean, you're not going to hear Muggs, Armand anywhere else. I don't believe you. I mean, they've collaborated with Earl. I don't think they have any stuff with Earl beats elsewhere, right?
No, you're wrong. There's Earl beat on, he has the first track on Shrines. He produced that one.
Yeah, that's an Earl beat. Okay.
And does he have something on Rome, or maybe I'm imagining that? No, maybe not. But he definitely does have the first track on Shrines. Yeah.
So that's, again, it's not the most essential part of the year, but it's not the most essential in terms of quality, but it's great in terms of, it's an 8 out of 10. And I think in terms of planning out their year, like you have Sardonic, you have stuff that shows up on Church and on Bessie, on I Told Bessie, and thematically, I think when you think about the tracks that show up, they're essential tracks on those albums. They're literal tracks. And I think in terms of the stuff on this album, I don't want to say fan service because that's like a pejorative term, but it's more like Easter eggs, like Mugs, and Earl beats, and also another an Alchemist stuff that doesn't show up on the Haram thing. The Haram thing is fucking like. There's also breadcrumbs if you're looking for stuff like the set. Like, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. Like, seeing that Seb Bash is there and Markey is there is kind of like a sort of roadmap to be like, hey, maybe you want to check this stuff out too.
Yeah.
Like dig deeper. So
yeah, absolutely.
Moving forward there to, I don't know if anybody's heard of this one, Aethiopes, Billy Woods and Preservation. I think it got some press. I don't know. I think I talked about it once or twice on the show. Sucks. Don't listen to it. Trash. Boring. No. Not gonna, I can't even do this fucking bit. I this justice on the year end because I was so exhausted at the end of the year end, and I said I would get to it properly eventually, and I intend to do so. This is, I hesitate to say it's the best Billy Woods album, but I think it's his most complete statement.
Right. Yeah.
What do you think?
That's a good question.
Just because he's done so much, like, at the very least, solo. And it's harder to compare it to Armand because that's the fucking problem. And I mean, I think ultimately I was on with this. Like, I mean, part of what I want to do with this podcast is give a lot of people their flowers. I mean, like, fucking want to put some ears on Duncecap. Like, that was first and foremost there. Fanon, Messiah. Like, I want people to listen to them. Like, give them their appreciation for what they've contributed. But, like, ultimately, I'm going to just yell at people that Billy Woods is the best. Like, pretty much this podcast does this all the time. But, like, if you just look at the body of work, it's very hard to argue stronger fucking body of work than Billy Woods and any, like, authors. Like, I think I said straight up authors going right now. Like, name an author who has written more trenchant, like, social criticism, fiction, essays, whatever than this man.
Yeah.
And then just every time I listen to this, I'm bowled over. Like, it's hard for me to listen to this too often because it's so overwhelming. And I said I was going to get back to Kendrick about this. And I was talking about this, and it's like, I think about To Pimp a Butterfly when I listen to this album because I think they both had similar aims in terms of coming up with something defining that was supposed to be like a social criticism work that was supposed to be weighty and important. But the thing about Kendrick is that he has, I hate to mention this fucking guy, a Kanye sort of thing about like, it's got to be North, it's got to be about me. At the end of the day, it's about himself. Can't step outside of himself. And he tries to address this on his most recent album, and it's boring. The music that comes out of that's pretty boring. I talked about that on the Mr. Morale episode. No need to belabor the point. And Woods is just so goddamn compelling as a writer, and the music he chooses to pair it with is just fucking remarkable. Like, the producers he works with every time out come out with something different and compelling to listen to, whether it's Kenny Siegel, Preservation, Messiah music, every time perfectly appropriate for what he's spitting. And just, and here, like, just from the beginning with Asylum and No Hard Feelings is just grabs you by the throat. And I feel like, I don't know, it's very hard for me to discuss the album because it's overwhelming, but I said I was going to get to the Kendrick thing where I feel like Kendrick just came up with something that's so overwhelming and weighty that it wants you to think about how overwhelming and weighty it is. This just crams so much into 40 minutes that doesn't feel even like 40 minutes. Whereas the Kendrick album has a bit of, I swear I'm going to stop talking very soon. The Kendrick album is like one of those it has that Kamasi, the epic quality where it's like that box set of the show. I've said this before on the show where you have it there to say that you have it. How often do you watch it? This is something you can pull out. It's not fucking PBS Masterpiece Theater 7-part thing that you don't watch. It's The Wire. You can pull it out anytime.
Yeah. Well, I think as well, like, a big part of that is also because Preservation is such a good producer and, like, knows how to link songs and everything like that. Like, the sequencing of this album is, like, really fantastic. And, like, so when this first got announced, I was like, oh shit, because obviously there's, previous Preservation with collabs, but the last time Preservation has done a high album song was with Car, with Days of Dr. Yinlo. And I was kind of expecting this to sound similar instrumentally, but it doesn't sound similar at all. But this is, as much as I do love Days of Dr. Low, this is a much more concise album, and it's just, yeah, it's like that. You're right, that gut punch it just hits you every time, and everything flows so well, and there's like so much subject matter. And also as well, like, you know, people say it's a really depressing album, which it generally is, but there's also kind of a bit, you know, songs later on, like Versailles and the song with Shinehead, where it's kind of, it shows more of like his, I suppose, like maybe dancehall kind of influence as well. And it's, there's a song in there where he's kind of rapping about his sister cooking in the kitchen and things like that as well. So there are little bits where it does kind of let it breathe a little bit, which I think really helps too, and you know, prevents it from just being like too overwhelming.
I mean, I think that Versailles reputation for being depressing, because what Despot's doing on there is essentially an even more depressing riff on Lupe's Put You On Game, where he's being a literal despot and talking about how he's going to just destroy you and your family, and like peace. It's one of the best despot verses ever. It's
put the hammer to your knees and test your reflexes.
Yeah,
so good.
Like, just breaks it down from like in like visceral level, like in the literal medical sense of it. Like, Despot is the J Electronica we didn't know we needed. He's never going to drop an album, and that's okay. He's just going to show up like incredible verses once every year or two, and that's perfectly fine. That's what J Electronica should. We don't need any of these J Electronica albums. Stop.
Right.
J Electronica. Did you know I don't know if you follow this. Apparently, Markey and J Electronica and Jay-Z did a song together recently.
Oh, really? Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And when Markey was talking about it, he was bitching that they got him the wrong mineral water. Yeah,
that's the most Markey thing I've ever heard in my life.
That's the most Markey thing they complain. Yeah, someone needs a Discord still.
Amazing.
Just for my most recent listen, the Boldy, incredible for Boldy verse. Christine, one of the themes I noticed on the album is like every single track up into Christine is there. One of the things Billy does on all of his verses or combinations of verses, is he seems to take like a personal, like one of the verses, or at least within the verse itself, will have like personal details, or at least like, you know, details from American life, and then contrast them with like historical African details, I would say. I'm phrasing this very poorly, but think about Asylum versus No Hard Feelings. The way Asylum is like historical, like slavery details, breaks into like the No Hard Feelings verse, and then personal, like, and then Christine, he has none of that, but it's like he kind of takes the way I think of Billy's writing on this album is like a camera lens focusing out. Like he'll start on.
Well, Christine to me literally sounds like you're like slowly driving past a car crash, because you know of all the details making references to car crashes. But yeah, just the
slowly focus is amazing. Out. Yeah, and like the details he gives, and then eventually, well, he doesn't give the historical either slavery type detail, like slavery era details, or African like historical details. The way I'm phrasing this is so goddamn problematic and shitty, but you know what I mean. And then Mike Ladd all he's doing though, he's slowly bringing it back though from like, surface, like not surface level, like street level details. He slowly pulls it back more and more, like, details about like the surrounding like system details, I guess, for lack of a better term, in the second verse. And that sets the table for Mike Ladd to just slap you across the face with those like more historical detail, like the Ethiopic detail. God, I'm doing really bad. You know what I mean. Again, you know what I mean. But like Mike Ladd with the thematic details, the contextual details that the album has been providing. Like Wood sets the table and Ladd pulls the tablecloth. I think is the best way.
Right, yeah. And the transition into Christine into Heavy Water is so good. Yeah,
and then
amazing.
you have on the side, like basically Doldra. Like I feel like there's a 3-act structure to the album. Like the first 5 songs, Doldrums, and then you have NYNEX, 9X through to Versailles is the 2nd act, and then the 3rd act is like the closing, Proto Evangelicum through Smith and Cross. And Smith and Cross bows it with like the details about like sugar and rum. It's like it's imperialism. You know, like the root of it is imperialism that ruined everything from the start. That's the poison root of the tree. So, and then you have, I can't even, Remorseless is just Jesus God. Like the way
that's a fucking insane song. Yeah.
But I feel like these are all themes that, to take it back to Kendrick, like these are stuff he all tried to touch on into Pimp a Butterfly, but he took so much longer to do it, and so many more people, and like made it such more a grandiose statement to like, look at me, I'm making a statement type thing. I'm not trying to shit on Butterfly. Again, it's not the Denzel Curry album. I was trying to shit on it.
Serena Butterfly,
Serena Butterfly, yeah. But I feel like I'm just trying to, like, I guess tiers of writing. Like the Curry album would be at the bottom, and then you have Kendrick there. Like Kendrick, great album, but it's still ultimately a surface level statement, or at least look at me making a statement. And then you have Woods, who is making a statement that I think is so much more resonant here, that has so much more to it. And
right,
I think, man, that's like you give people shiny fucking objects, but if you're gonna give somebody a Pulitzer, just saying.
Right, exactly. I know. I've been saying this. I'm saying Billy Woods and Carr both need their fucking Pulitzers already.
Just Carr too. Yeah, the Carr episode's your next episode. So. More so
than Bob Dylan. Fuck him.
Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan wrote propaganda songs. It's been
there you go.
Shout out Mike Watt. But
yeah, just another thing I want to touch on this is just how well placed the features are, and like. I think Woods has a way of like picking features that probably sound like they wouldn't necessarily work on paper, but they do. Like Boldy James is like, you know, I want to have a better way of saying this, but he's kind of like the maybe the more thinking man's rapper of the Griselda roster, right? So it makes more sense. But even so, it's like pretty wild that he's on here, and it just works so well. It's like the perfect intro to the song. And he also got Breezy Bruin and LP back on a song together for the first time. So long.
That's that Drew Gay-R quality of getting like Billy Woods and Lil Ugly Man on a song, right? Like same type of thing.
Yeah. And
as far as Boldy goes, I think Boldy has that quality of like Rock, where it's like he does one thing, but he does it with such surgical precision. You put him on the track, he's gonna fucking deliver that performance to such a level that it's exactly what is needed. Boldy, I'd say aside from Woods, Boldy had the best 2022 in terms of just like slugging up like 100, like, I don't know, pick a sports metaphor. I'm not Kale. I don't watch sports, but ask him. So
Boldy's been on fire for sure. He's killing it.
I can't really, enough ink has been spilled on the album. I spoke very poorly about the themes in a way that's probably going to make me look bad, but you know what I mean in terms of just like trying to like tie together the macro and the micro, the personal, et cetera, et cetera. Aaron very astutely pointed out to me that all the samples on this come from a film called Kongi's Revenge from 1970.
Okay, it makes sense. Yeah,
which I have not watched, but I'm sure I should have watched if I wanted to speak more intelligently about the album.
Right. I mean, Preservation is really good at doing that too. It's like, the whole Dr. Yen Lo thing where it's all from that same Manchurian Candidate film. Not the instrumentals themselves, but like the samples in between. He's really good at like sticking with that theme. And also, what's it? Eastern Medicine, Western Illness, similar thing where it's all from that one source, like records that he's bought, I think in Hong Kong.
All of his beat tapes, 1974. I mean, they're not all like 1974. Everything on that, I believe, is from 1974, including the stuff that seems like it's commenting on the modern day, which is super clever. every year he puts out the charity beat tapes, BDPs. Everything stays on theme. So he's very, very good about that. There was another point I was going to make that I forget. Typical. What are your feelings on real quick, Harlem? That's the deal breaker for people. The beat switch, the Sharif. I don't mind it. I think that it's thematically justified by the way everything builds from 9X and NYNEX onward.
Yeah.
Honestly, the one thing I think that I say this in my review I put up today. The only thing that I think I would change is I would find somewhere else, I don't know where, for Proto-Evangelicum to go, just because I think if you go from Versailles to Remorseless, you have Despot's verse into Wood's verse, and I think if you have that Despot verse into what Woods is saying on on Remorseless, that's really the statement of the album, the thesis of the album together, but I don't know where you put Proto-Evangelicum. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. I love Harlem.
Like people with that jarring break. I had no problem.
Yeah, personally. That's great. And I mean, Fatboy Sharif is a very interesting rapper to me. He's like such an original style. I've said this before. He's like the ODB of the Backwoodz fans in a weird way. That's probably quite surface level, but yeah, I don't know. He's just got a and I love the cookie jar, thing that he says at the end. It's just I think it's great. I think it's a great placement. I always think of those kind of like weird features as like maybe not so much features, but like interludes. Like they're you go into that artist's world for that brief period of time to link into the next song. But yeah, I love it. I love the whole piano break. It's awesome.
I mean, I think it's interesting that, well, first of all, okay, what's interesting is looking at the score. I mean, this is who could care. Looking at the fucking RYM scores on this, it's actually above the Doldrums. I don't know how the Doldrums is under a 4, by the way. That gets the Charles Bronson face, first of all. That's fucking you. Second of all,
it'll be because the Doldrums too minimalistic. That's what it would be. People will be like, it's too minimalistic, so therefore it's boring. That will be the reasoning.
Missing the point. But I think that Fatboy Sharif is interesting to me in that he falls into, not that you could put any of these people into a bucket, I suppose. You said ODB. I get like the Bruiser Wolf quality to him a little bit. And I think that definitely just you build up this tension from basically NYNEX all the way through to the end of Woods' verse. Quite literally on the instrumental, it breaks. Cookie dough, all that.
Yeah. I know. I feel like it was the right man for the job. Like the song gets really weird, and they put one of the weirdest rappers currently out doing it to embellish it.
For it, but I think Bruiser Wolf would be too funny. Like you need somebody.
Right.
Do it. Like whereas, I mean, Bruiser Wolf has gravity on his own album, but I think he would have been too. Like if he's helping on it, that might have been too much of a thematic break. So
yeah, and also like Fatboy Sharif isn't just like some goofy rapper dude. He's like there is actually lots of content in his lyrics, and he does make lots of historical references as well. So he is definitely the right. He has more in common with Woods than Bruiser Wolf does, perhaps.
Bruiser Wolf has nothing in common with E4.
Right. True. Yeah.
Like they're the only two rappers quote unquote in common with. So
right. Yeah.
Can't wait for the Danny Brown JPEG album, by the way, which I hope, we will eventually get, I assume we're going to get to hear Bruiser Wolf and Peggy on a track together, which should be a treat.
It will be great, yeah. Also, what do you think of, is it 9X or NYNEX? I don't know how to pronounce it. I said
the course of talking about this. I assumed it was NYNEX, like New York something exchange, like, I don't know. I think it's great. Who do you think is the best on that track? Obviously I think it's great, but who do you think wins? As so much as anyone can win a track on this, who do you think is?
Yeah, that's really tough. I do really like Quella's verse, but also, yeah, that's too tough. I can't call that. I think everyone's quite neck and neck. Maybe Denmark Vesey is probably a bit lower on the list, but he's still great on it.
Little bit low. No Jeb Bush, a little low energy compared to the rest. Just else is so outsized on that, and he's just kind of not.
He's kind of in the middle, right? Like he's just
Yeah, that one though. I think that one's most important for how it kind of tonally changed. Well, Doldrums, I would say, like kind of ends the first. Like I said, I think there's a definite 3-act structure to the album, and I feel like that ends the first act. Doldrums definitively ends the first act. That definitively starts the second.
Yeah.
Like one of the things I think is most impressive about the album, and that's true of a lot of my favorite albums, same as Mad Villainy, same as Triple X, is that like it has so many like structures within itself. Like it works as one whole piece. It works as like many little pieces. Like the first 2 tracks work together as a suite. The last 3 work together as a suite. It has 3 acts together, like within the songs themselves, like within Wood's own verses. Just the way the writing is so intricate.
Yeah.
Just can't say enough good shit about. The other thing was I got to bring up Aaron's fucking thing. In addition to pointing out that it's the Kongi's the film, he also said the cover art is also appropriate as a sample and or appropriation. It's a painting, I believe, is it a Rembrandt or?
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Oh fuck. Okay. We're just not going to do that either. But no, I'm not going to. Again, I'm trying. New Year's resolution: not going to spend large parts of the podcast looking things up while people stand there awkwardly. So you do your own research. But yeah, great fucking album. If you haven't heard it, you can't listen to the. My album of the year for last year.
Yeah, there you go.
For sure. Although again, Church creeping up on it. We'll talk about it when we talk about Church. Just, I feel like they were intended as companion albums, and I think that the only thing that stopped Woods from dropping them both at the same time or as a double album or as a stream trolling type content dump thing was that he wanted people to absorb this before they got that.
Yep. And I'm glad that he did, because otherwise I would be too overwhelmed.
I'm still both. I'll be absorbing them for years.
Yep.
Yeah. All right.
Totally.
Moving.
Yeah, again, you're right. I can't say enough good things about the album, and it's awesome, the kind of album that I just, I sometimes can't really put into words. I just feel like I'm not qualified to really talk about a lot of the content and stuff. It's just amazing. Put it that way.
Speaking of, I feel like we're about to wrap it up, and I always have one more thing to say. I think that what Preservation does on Deep Water with, I feel like he made a conscious effort to mimic Fantastic Damage era LP for LP's parts on that, and that is super cool. It feels not at all sticky, and it, like, the way, again, like, they go from 9X, and I gotta stop fucking not deciding how to pronounce that. But like the way the structure again is so brilliant, like builds up to LP coming in, and then naturally to him doing that with the instrumental, where it's like comes into like something that's like mimicking Fantastic Damage era for him, like it's like not the right, but it does not feel like a fucking weird gimmicky like game album thing where it's like, okay, now
yeah, like here's the LP feature,
yes, the LP. now I'm picturing Game trying to rap like LP.
Oh dear. It's also it's just so good to hear LP not on RTJ songs. Like when he was on the that song on that Droog album with Black Thought and Mark Holme and Fahim. It was just, I don't know. It's just something really, it's a real novelty with hearing him on non-RTG beats.
Yeah, I thought that one took me a second too. First of all, because the beat is super weird and janky, like, and barely even there. But
yeah, exactly.
And almost willfully annoying, which is one of the most Droog things you could possibly do, is like I got Black Thought and LP on a song together, and I came up with this nothing ass beat. Like, fuck you for liking like. but then if you like listen to the actual, like, I don't know, that one was like one of the things about Crew Toy. I don't know if I got to this when we talked about Crew Toy. It was my album of the year 2020. So I don't know, but it was also at the end of the very, very, very long episode. So was that it has that quality of a great album where the last third of it kind of trails off, like Supreme Clientele.
Right.
So, but Supreme Clientele in that way was like in that late 90s, early 2000s way where it was like a bunch of skits and stuff.
Yeah.
Where
you got to fill up the whole CD, right? So you have shit like Clyde Smith and all that kind of thing going on. Who would you fuck? Yeah.
Who Would You Fuck? Which was like I don't know. And where's the
Woodger at the bass head?
Like weird guilt. I don't know, but it had that great album quality where it's like the more you listen to it, the less it annoys you. And I think that's eventually where I fell on with Pravda as a song, where it was like I started to actually appreciate the way those verses played off each other and the beat stopped annoying me. Because for a while I was just like, why is Fahim on this? Like more so than with a lot of stuff where it's like, you know, okay, Mock's here, so I guess you get Fahim for free with your Mock feature. Like it's like a coupon. But But then, like, so I don't know. It grew on me, but I understand how that could be like. I can understand how that would be underwhelming for people. I don't know if you've ever gotten Thought. I mean, I'm almost certain you've never gotten Thought and LP together before, and that's also another weird combo I don't think anybody ever asked for. Like, it's a dream nobody ever really wanted.
And they'll do it again on Black Thought's album, so or with Killer Mike as well, but. And ASAP Rocky, strangely placed there, but yeah. What? Just quickly go back to that beat on Prada. That is like the most drumless beat.
Yeah, I'm again.
Right, like
this has been a hot topic in the chat. Shout out to Celestiphone, who really does not care for the term. If you listen to Celestiphone's album, he actually yells at you to not call his shit drumless before throwing in a lot of drums. Buy Celestiphone's album.
Right, yeah.
Ask Buy to throw in a plug for Celestiphone's album in some way, shape, or form here on the YouTube or whatever. But it's a great album. He has a lot of good features on it that actually are shared with some you will hear about on this podcast. But
yes,
there is no way you cannot call that. That is like aggressively drumless. That is almost like Drew reads RYM and was like, "Oh, you want some drumless shit, huh?" I'll give you fucking
Yeah. Drumless is now an official tag. I'm like, yeah, well, let me show you this. Yeah.
Drummer tag. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Who did that beat? Who did that fucking beat? That wasn't Sadhu. That was that wasn't Fahim.
It's someone real random, right? I think it's just like someone who's got barely any credits.
No. Okay. Now we're getting
this up because now I'm curious.
Yeah, great radio. Now we're looking this up.
Oh, shit. Yeah. But yeah. No, I'm looking. Shut up. And somewhere else there, and I'll be like, "Oh, of course, it was that person."
I think it was actually it was the only beat. It was the only producer placement on that. It was either Fahim or somebody like notable who only.
That's not Fahim. It is. Oh, come on, internet, show me what I need to be seen. Oh, no way, it's Roper Williams who worked with
it was fucking
Fatboy Sharif.
I told you it was someone notable. I thought it was
Argov, but no, it's not. Yeah, wow. Anyway,
Argov
we're doing off the track here. I just have to know.
I did not know Argov had so much. Oh, the best beat on there, Matryoshka, is Argov and Preservation. That makes sense. I did not know Argov had so much on Krutoy. That makes a lot of sense considering how good he is, but no shit. Wow, shout out to Roper Williams making such a...
Yeah, I mean, Roper Williams has some very... Yeah, he's one of the most drumless sometimes with his production. The album, the work he's got, Fatboy Sharif, is a similar vein.
Oh, yeah, I have not heard the new Roper and Sharif. How is that? The most recent one.
They put out an EP. I don't think I've heard the EP, but the most recent Fatboy Sharif is it No Face or something? And their album is really fucked, but it's great. It's
I was referring to Planet Unfaithful, which I downloaded but have not heard. This is the EP, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't heard it yet, but I'll get to it. Yep. Anyway, speaking of getting to things, should we maybe move on to I Told Bessie? Or?
Real quick, so I will let you handle the intro for Bessie real quick. So, if you want to do that.
Yeah, sweet. I Told Bessie, first solo Elucid album since Save Yourself, in terms of one that he actually raps on. And it is one where he didn't produce on it at all. I was expecting him to have some production on it, but he got other people to do the production for him, which I understand because he, kind of came off producing with Shrapknel a couple of years ago prior to that, and he has a very intricate production style, so I can see why he'd want to just, write rhymes instead. But yeah, I told Bessie, I mean, I'm going to get quite angry talking about this album because I'm going to start ranting about the fact that people love Woods but don't give enough respect to Elucid. So.
Oh, yeah. They never do. They never do.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know if you were aware of this, but Elucid raps like a cop.
Still one of the most baffling. I've read a lot of baffling shit on RYM, but that is one of the most baffling things I've ever read on RYM.
As I said,
which is saying something.
With the guy who said that Vic Spencer is a Tyler the Creator biter.
Because they both have deep voices. So by that logic, Tyler the Creator is a Rock This Monster biter.
Yeah, Vic Spencer bites a guy that he started rapping well before.
Yeah,
that's actually impressive that he has a fucking time machine.
Yeah,
So, basically, I would say that with this album, conceptually, I would say there are two poles, like with when he's talking about death and like matriarchal death. There's Killer Priest's mother and Redacted's Donda. And I would say that this falls in the middle conceptually in how he talks about stuff. In that it's not as on the nose as Mother, in that he's not like on theme every song addressing it. But emotionally, I think it's closer to Mother than the other one, first of all.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's about his grandmother, right? Bessie was
it's about his grandmother, not
that he's staying with.
Oracle. Like
I more think of it as it's dedicated to his grandmother, but it's not necessarily about her. It's because he's still rapping all sorts of shit.
Touchstones, as opposed to like it's a dedication, not a concept album.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that's why you have like touchstones that he's like. In terms of like the second track, he like hits cliches that she would say, like "rocks in your head" and "tell the truth, shake the devil."
Mm-hmm.
And like in the first track, the "just got to have it and can't sit down."
Yeah,
I love the way he recontextualizes cliches like that is very moving.
Yeah, I agree.
And there was kind of a thesis that I didn't really flesh out in terms of like Woods versus Kendrick that I kind of wanted to touch upon with him versus Kanye here. And again, like mother or grandmother. But again, I'm talking like I'm being a little loose with it when I say matriarchal, like narcissistically approaching the subject, being able to step outside yourself and like not make it about yourself when you talk about this sort of thing. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that Elucid's writing style really lends itself like to a more poetic exploration of the form.
Yeah. I mean,
especially
that's also
tracks like Five. Like there are certain tracks on here that I think are more abstract than others, darker than others. Closer to, I mean, yeah, like there's stuff on here that's more. I also think he does get a lot of like he doesn't get enough credit. Period. Point blank. Period. There's stuff on here that's more approachable than other. Like I don't think he's as unapproachable as he is given like criticism for. But there is stuff on here that's kind of unapproachable, kind of dark, kind of dissonant. And then there's stuff on here that I think is closer to Armand Hammer. But I think he does a fairly good job balancing it. I think in the middle, though, I think it does get darker as it goes. And I think there are like 2 or 3 tracks on here that are closer to like the Bernadette level of Horse Latitude level of more free associative, if that makes sense. Like there are 2 or 3 tracks that I think are more really dark, free associative poetry.
Yeah, well, I think instrumentally, though, that's not always the case. Like, the opener, shout out to Child Actor, by the way, amazing production. Spelling is, like, quite a, like, uplifting, colourful instrumental. And Betamax is, like, the most uplifting song of 2023. I play that song all the time. It's great. It's just, like, it's quite euphoric. But, yeah, I guess you are right in terms of, like, in the middle, it's a bit darker. Like, it's Nostrande with the Woods verse where he's like talking about the kid who's like, I'm not a kid anymore, I'll break your fucking jaw. He's like in the back of the police car. And the what's the other one? Oh, Ghoulie as well is this very interesting dark beat. But yeah, sorry, Nostrand like sounds like some eXquire shit. Like really, really hypnotic alchemist instrumental on that one as well. But in terms of the writing, I mean, he says it in Betamax. You know, sometimes the reason doesn't matter, and so there are lots of things which are there that you're probably not supposed to get anywhere. You know, it's like his best form of expression is doing it that way, but the listener, perhaps it is supposed to be ambiguous to them. You know, it's maybe not really supposed to be there to be pontificated on. It's just a direct expression of how he's feeling.
Sphinx and I talked about on the Cold Vein episode, some of Worrell's lyrics on Cold Vein are just like code specifically for a very specific audience. I think some of this is for like a specific audience of his family, or maybe a specific audience that isn't there anymore. His grandmother, you know?
Yep.
And that gives it all the much more power, in the same way that some of Priest's lyrics on Mother are for his mother, you know?
Right.
Like, just there's an intimacy to it, a power to it, and like the just specificity. I can't mispronounce such a common word. But, you know, this, I don't know. I feel like, and Sophia talked about this with Aesop, in that he gets so much bullshit criticism for being esoteric when he's talking about such universal emotions. And I feel like Elucid is not really that esoteric in a lot of ways in what he's approaching. And this album is a good example of that. It's just the way he's talking, like some of the details might be esoteric because they're not necessarily for you or me or the listening audience. But it's a testament to how good the music is that the songs themselves sound good. This good.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just saying before you got on as well, it's his, you know, first proper solo album. Okay, so, sorry, looking at his RYM page, there's things here that are listed as albums, which I'm kind of like, well, are they like intended as albums? Like Shit Don't Rhyme No More and Seership? I don't know. Maybe we can just talk about that more when we get to Charge My Toothbrush.
There's stuff like EPs. I would say Seership considered an EP. It's like a digital EP. It's like a sound collage.
Right. So this is like his first non-sound collage format since Save Yourself, and it's one that he did not produce on at all. Because I guess he wanted a break from production, because this production is very intricate. But I remember reading something on Twitter where he said, like, before this album came out, maybe even a few months prior, he was like, the next album I make is going to be the loudest album I've ever made. And this album isn't. So I think he ended up scrapping that idea and then going a completely different direction and making this one that's actually like quite, you know, colourful in terms of the production choices.
I would like to have revisited the Toothbrush album before this to hear if some of the loud ideas made it into that, because I don't super remember a bunch from that. You Got to Charge My Toothbrush, which I quite liked, gave it out of 10. But we're only going to really touch on in passing on this podcast. Yeah. I only it a few months ago, unfortunately. But yeah, maybe some of those made it onto that album.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah.
But yeah, like Elucid solo work just gets honestly completely looked over, and his Armand work gets completely misunderstood by partially the consequence of how good Woods is. That people want to hear him. It's like an even more extreme example of in this case, it's racism. People who don't want to hear Killer Mike on the Jewel shit and edit him out. That's just
right.
That's just racism. But yeah, like I will never understand. Like, I mean, shout out to Sports Dude. Hope you're enjoying making weird edits of shit. Fucking weirdo. I don't know if he was the guy who said he sounds like a cop, but still
might as well have been.
Might as well. Yeah, this album is great, though. I will not say it's the best. I don't enjoy overall in terms of the Backwoodz year. Like, overall, like, I'm not going to, at the end of the day, watch Mojo this shit and be like, rank your Backwoodz albums.
Right.
I'm not that, but I don't enjoy it overall. I mean, partially because it's so heavy and heady as much as either of the Woods albums. And really not as much as the Sketch album either, partially because I like to listen to the Sketch album on my way to work and get really pissed off.
Yeah.
It has that visceral quality to it. But every time I listen to it, I appreciate it more. Spelling is one of his best songs. Spelling is just gorgeous. One of the things about Spelling I really appreciate is personal memory of mine is when I was in high school. I went to a longtime listeners of the podcast might remember me relaying a detail that I went to a cult for a high school. It wasn't really much of a school, it was a cult. And they always like to talk about how when you get to heaven, you would just be up and singing all the time. And I was like, I don't want to do that. And then they like, you will want to when you're there. Like you're going to change your mind. It's just something you're going to want to do. And I feel like this song actually does a great job of conveying a complexity of emotion that just the nuance in it, like I'm listening to it and I can't tell whether it's about being in heaven and being anxious and wanting to leave and go back to Earth, or being so overjoyed that you're finally achieving your reward. Like there's so much passion and, again, nuance in Elucid's delivery that it makes me reconsider what my dumb fuck cultist high school teachers were telling me. Not that they were right or anything, but it's more a testament to Elucid's writing and the passion of his delivery and reflection upon his personal statement. So,
yeah. I think as well, there's one line in this which I think kind of sets the tone in terms of this being a tribute maybe tributed to his grandmother, but still, how would I say this? It's tributed to his grandmother, but there's still like himself in the album, like, because what I'm getting at is he says some shit where he can be quite nasty, right? And he's got the line, "When I fucked you, it was worth the wait, the rhyme, and the reason." So it's like that kind of thing where he still is showing this like more like, I don't know, guttural side of himself, even if it is something that is quite a sincere tribute to his grandmother. Like it's a quite an interesting balance there.
Yeah,
I think that's pretty consistent throughout.
I would say, that's another really interesting aspect of the album is that it's not like, I mean, to go back, I suppose, to Kanye for a minute, I feel like when artists like that give tributes, or like the general idea of giving a tribute is that you have to whitewash it and blanch it and white lie. You know what I mean? I don't think he does that here. He's giving a tribute that feels very true to himself and, human. Like, the humanity is one of the things that I find truly appealing about all of the Backwoodz artists, is that they're giving these earthbound perspectives.
Yeah.
That are still very literate and just compelling.
And then you've also got like an instrumental like Sardonyx, which is like, kind of like verbal intercourse type
one from
pornographic kind of sounds and the beat. And again, you're putting this on an album which is dedicated to your grandmother, So again, it's showing the whole, all facets of who Elucid is as a person.
Right. Yeah, very compelling album, very, very striking cover. Again, in the spirit of Haram, cover art that my wife care for. Again, showing all facets of raw and real, though.
Interesting you mentioned that it's like one you probably haven't listened to as much, but I think this is the Backwoodz release I listened to the most of the year, and I think it is because there's just like a certain colourfulness to the production and the way that kind of corresponds, or maybe contrasts rather, with his lyricism is just very compelling to me.
I've listened to it a lot. I ordered the CD. It took a while to get here. I would have listened to it more had it gotten here sooner. But it sounds good in the car. The production sounds really good in the car, actually.
Yeah. So, Willie Green, did he do the mastering? Because he's usually the dude behind all of the. Oh, he did the mixing. He knows how to mix things.
Speaking of giving dudes
very well,
we mentioned the names enough or at all so far. Willie Green, Steel Tip Dove, fucking masters of the craft, both. Willie Green. If there's been an underground rap album you've loved in the past couple of years, Willie Green's name is probably somewhere in the credits. So,
and also it's just really, I just love hearing child actor beats. They're really, really, generally just amazing. And one thing as well, which probably even kind of rounds the album out quite well in terms of you talking about the whole going to a high school, that was a cult, is the closing track is about him being in church and he's choking on a mint. And I listened to an interview with him about this, and he said that, he would go to church every Sunday, and he had this very vivid memory of the time he was choking on a mint in church, and no one in the church was there to help him. Like, no one, pat him on the back or anything like that. So,
the Lord will provide.
Yeah, exactly. So again, just taking things full circle in quite an interesting way, and it's also like an interesting way to end the album because it's quite a short track and it's like a short story, and then that's it. After Betamax, which is the most inspirational, amazing, uplifting song of 2023, in my opinion. From what I've heard from 2023.
Well, I can't imagine cults are going to come up again on this podcast, but moving on to something a little more uplifting will be Metal Lung by Shrapknel.
Yeah.
So, going back to...
Where to start with this? Far out.
Going back to the Call Out Culture podcast. So, I guess they had I really, really wish I got to listen to more of this. I just discovered they did it. I must have missed it on my feed. They did a podcast about the curious case of rap retirements with Sketch. Oh God, I wish I listened to more of this because I guess they all thought at one point they were going, like, they talked about how rap retirements are bullshit because they are, and they all at one point thought, everybody in the room thought at one point they were going to retire. Curly, Zilla,
right.
Maybe not Dove. I guess Dove at this point has had a pretty consistent career, but. So yeah, Curly thought he was going to retire with his health issues. Alaska after Hanger, Zilla after a future former rapper, which should have been obvious from the title, but apparently I didn't realize that for review, even though it's very obvious listening to the content of the album. And when he explains it, I should have been fucking like, I feel once again dumb, but
yeah, because I listened to the episode. Yeah, he said that he was convinced he was going to retire because he was starting a family, and then he realized once he started a family, he was rapping more than he thought he would be. So I just kept going.
Right, and then like he says in the episode, it's like, and then I did that, and I put out more music than ever. Like I was actually more productive than ever after.
Yeah.
Although the song he puts at the end of Future Former Rapper is like the most moving rap song I've ever heard. Like that song makes me cry.
Right.
But seriously, this album feels like two people revitalized after finding their love for their art form and also just being utterly pissed off about the state of the world, but also like regurgitating the entirety of rap history, especially Curly Castro. I would say, because one of the things I find fascinating about Wood's style is I keep referencing Ghostface in terms of Woods, not just because he wears a mask, which first of all, not enough people do these days. Second of all, because he used to, Ghostface used to, is because I think a lot of the way that Woods spits narratives is in that Ghostface on Maxine sort of way, Ghostface on Shaky Dog sort of way, where it's like his narratives are of like accrued details together that give you a fuller picture. And I feel like that's part of it. And it's like also references to other things that kind of the more references you get that he makes in combination with those other details, you get the fuller picture. He's not like Slick Rick or something who's giving you like a full-on narrative. That's not the type of narrative rapper Woods is most of the time. Although occasionally he will give you a full narrative. And I think Castro, especially on this album, just takes whole references. Like he'll give you almost like fucking, I can't believe I'm making a second game reference on this episode, but like straight up game style streams of references to other things, but it's not corny somehow. Like Castro can just give you a verse that's just like reference on reference to other songs, other pop culture things, but via context, via delivery, it just sounds intense, vaguely threatening, and awesome. And combined in contrast,
I think he's a weird way of. Oh, so I was going to say, he kind of like tells, I don't even really know how to explain it, but the way he references like other rap songs is he kind of does it backwards. Like it's not, Well, I don't know. He just phrases things in a particular way where it's not like I'm like X rapper, you know, or like something like that. It's more like he will flip a well-known line, or not even well-known line, like a line that's like a deep cut from another song, in a way that's like just quite unique and yeah, not it's like not super obvious all the time.
Yeah, like when Game does it, it's more like he'll like be like name of Pac song, and thuggin' like name of rapper, and then like name, and then he'll be like current cool slang term, and he'll like be like X to Y to Z. Whereas like the way Castro does it, it's like first of all, the flow is so intense, it's never lazy, and then it's also just contextually it's always to serve a bigger theme. It's always intense, and it's always clever, and I feel like it's just somehow different, and it never feels lazy, unlike my way to try to tie it all together to explain it. And he like explained this very well on his podcast, that works so well in contrast with Prem, who like Caleb talks about all the time how he likes conversational rappers. And I feel like, Castro is a battle rapper and Prem's a conversational rapper. And Castro on the podcast said the two of them together can never rap the same way on a track. And that's a great quality to have.
Right.
Like even if they try, they can. Yeah. And then over these weird ass instrumentals, they might be talking about the same thing and they can never do it the same way. So... So then you have this overall, and the way I described it on the year-end episode is the great lost 2000s Def Jux album that I never knew I wanted.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was going to bring something up about that because I do really feel like they have a very similar dynamic to Cannibal Ox on the Cold Vein, where Curly is like vaster in the sense that he's like this kind of like larger-than-life figure who like has non-traditional lyricism, but it's like said in a more like kind of forceful way, and whereas Premrock is more like Vaudel Mega, where it's like much more cryptic. He hits you with more of it, you know, in a row, and it takes a while to kind of like process everything that's coming at you as well. So I feel like the two of them do share very similar dynamics to Vast and Vaudel on the Cold Vein specifically.
Right.
I don't know if you agree with that, but that's kind of one thing I have kind of picked up on.
I mean, he literally invokes Vaudel on the first two bars of the album. So
right, yeah.
Obviously,
Vaudel, Megala, yeah.
One of the every single opening track on all of these albums, by the way, just like spelling. I can't believe I've forgotten the name of the one on Aethiopes before No Hard Feelings. I can't believe it's escaping me. But then you have spelling, you have that Running Rebel Swordplay, Paraquat. When we get to Church, they just, every single opening track they just know how to set off an album ridiculously well. That's another gift of this collective. So this is probably the liveliest of all the albums, save for maybe Duncecap, but this is twice the length of the Duncecap, and I feel like is trying to do a lot more than the Duncecap album, so it gets more credit from me.
The instrumentals in this are like crazy. So many layers and just like interesting BPMs and drum patterns and things like that. One thing I should mention as well, just before moving forward, is, are you aware that the album art was done by the same artist who did the Rome album art for Armand Hammer?
Who did, you said Haram?
No, Rome.
Oh, I did not know that. This is my favorite album art in a very long time.
It's amazing. It's so cool.
It's beautiful, beautiful album art. I don't know if it's a reference to something. It probably is, considering the two of these guys, especially Castro. Castro, the only guy who can get away with making lost references, except for two former guests, friend of the show, Jermaineson. Constant lost references I don't get, but I think this is
and Marvel references. I don't want to hear anyone else making Marvel references other than Castro.
Fuck you. we will get to you on the upcoming Wu-Tang episode solo with the Zarp section, where I will just make snoring and farting noises throughout. But yeah, this is gorgeous album art. Damn Alice apparently was supposed to be someone's solo song, but they decided they would sound, and it had a hook and everything. I forget. That's again came up on the Shrapknel Call Out Culture episode. I forget who. I think it was supposed to be a Prem solo song, but they decided with a hook and everything, but decided that it sounded better together.
True. What are your thoughts? I guess the song that seems to be divisive for whatever reason is Night of the Living Analog. What are your thoughts on that song? I've seen some people say it's out of place. I don't think it is, but I just I don't know.
Is that the Woods feature?
The Woods feature is at the end of something else, I think. It's the one where it's got that weird like swishing noise, and it's the don't change that dial, that one.
No, I don't think that's out of place at all. I don't know.
No.
No.
Yeah, I don't get that criticism, and that's one of the ones where I think it's all entirely referential, right? He's talking about watching Rhapsody and what he would see on Rhapsody.
Totally in Curly's wheelhouse. So this does, and combined with what I heard of the Shrapknel Call Out episode, make me want to revisit Little Willie Hutton, which I not super nice things about on the podcast before, said it was vaguely annoying, and then I found out he had terrible health issues when he recorded it. I'm like, wow, I sound like a huge asshole. So I hate it. There's no bad Curly Castro material out there. There's no bad either of these guys' material out there. You need to listen to all of it. But as Shrapknel, they really found their voices like collectively. In the same way that, I mean, Zilla said that he didn't really find himself until he felt like quitting and restarted his career in the second half of the 2010s. I feel like he was way more, like he said, he was way more confident. I feel like in the same way with these two. And they did kind of adopt the Cannibal Ox model. Again, Cold Vein is probably up there with Illmatic as one of the most influential records of all time. Go listen to the Cold Vein episode. And also, thanks, assholes. I don't care if you disagree with him. Fucking unban him.
Unban Sphinx. Free Sphinx.
What the fuck is wrong with you? Free Sphinx.
That was bullshit. Were you also aware on Cold Burn that is Curly Castro on the hook, making that monster voice?
No.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. I was like, because there's unlisted features on this album, right? I was like, oh, maybe it's someone I'm not up to play with, but it's literally Curly Castro doing the "When the cold gets hot." Yeah, that blew my mind because that's my favorite song on the album. I play that all the time. So good. Yeah,
I think my favorites are probably the first two. I think Damn Alice is super clever. In fact, one's awesome on it, and Mescalito and A Tribe Off Stressed later on is really great too. And obviously Woods when he shows up is awesome. Yeah. Zilla when he shows up is great too. And the last two are a really great way to end the album as well. But yeah, the first two are pretty impeccable. Just it sprints out the gate. Like there's no better way to there's a remix of Mescalito on Spotify right now.
Oh yeah.
It's more on the EME side, but I think it comes across very well. It has a guest feature attached to it as well. So like the Woods thing, Wood is actually listed on that now. So
true. Because
which kind of spoils the surprise. I liked having the surprise.
Yeah, sorry guys. Yeah, but I really did appreciate the unlisted features. Listening to it the first time, and I love the Premrock line. Sorry, not Premrock. Zilla Rocco line. You sold your fucking Rock Marcy beat for 25 beans. Just calling out people stealing that production style. Also, I really love the instrumental switch near the end on Metal Some Kids when Rob Sonic comes in. That's really, really cool. Do you prefer the production on this or the production on the first Shrapknel album, given that they're effectively two separate producers doing the majority of the work?
I think it's situational. I think the first one is more immediately appealing. I like this one when I'm in the mood for it. I would say. Yeah. This one's more, I will say, this one's more Steel Tip Dove. This one is more like, I won't say it's a Mike Dean situation where it's like he just went in and put his stamp on it, like he heavy hand. But this is definite. He's more heavily felt here than, you know, his hand is felt, but I don't think he's like just straight up making this his show.
Right.
But I mean, what do you the Dove album, by the way? The All the Weight Feathers Can't Carry.
No, I was actually just going to ask, like, is this similar to his other production style, or is it more him getting in his Def Jux bag?
It depends. I mean, this is more, I think, it's calling back to 2000s Def Jux. It is kind of, there are notes of his other stuff. He did a cloud rap album. What the fuck is it called? Why did I think I have a mouse? I'm on a tablet. There's something like that. Nothing touches the ground here. There's some of that on here, and some of that on there, I would say. And I don't know. It's unique. I would highly recommend that album, though. I was going to kind of touch on that, and like certain, like if you like a RIYL type section for if you like Backwoodz stuff, other stuff in that orbit, and also the Fireside Chats things, the Jason Griffs stuff. Just that I think have also aroused. Oh God, that was a Freudian. Arose out of the same view, but yeah. So.
Right.
Anyway, yeah. But that is the problem with that album is not a lot of people have heard it because I think that he's trying to get people to actually, you know, do the weird shit, pay money for it.
Right.
Until he puts it on, so he's waiting to put it out on DSPs. I apparently value my own temporal pleasures over my daughter's future. So I was like, hey, yeah, sure. Here's $15. Give me a cassette.
Yeah.
My daughter doesn't need to go to college. College is a grift anyway. I'll take a cassette. So I need instrumentals I can only listen to in my basement. So
did you get a digital copy as well, or did you only get the cassette?
Copy, but the instrumentals aren't on the digital. Yeah, I got a digital copy, but the instrumentals are only on cassette.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
That's the problem. Is I wanted the instrumentals on, like, and I don't have a way to rip them off the cassette.
Yeah.
Because the instrumentals are part of the best part of it. Not the best part of it, but I really like to have a digital copy of the instrumentals. Hint.
Yeah.
Dove, if you're listening.
Yeah, if you're listening, yeah. Which
anyway
might be. I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know. I've been told that maybe Backwoodz people listen to this sometimes. Allegedly. Anyway, moving on. So what is next on the itinerary here?
You've got non-Backwoodz auxiliary stuff for preservation. I haven't heard this, so you'll have to comment on this one.
Oh, you haven't heard it at all? Really?
No, I never got around to it.
It's great. Unfortunately, it's very long, and I can't pick it. I meant to talk more in depth about it on the year end, and I was like, it's great. Listen to it. I mean to go more in depth on it, but it's very long. And I pretty much have the same thing to say here now.
Right.
Yeah, it's a really good beat tape that pulls a lot of, if you're into Celestiphone, some Small Pro stuff, if you're into the dude from who writes for Weiss, what the fuck is his name? He put out the Take a Kayak, which I've showed on here before. Sun Ra. Like psychedelic beat tape stuff, very good. It's got like collage tape aspects to it. He basically takes news clips, psych rock stuff from the year, kind of puts it together into commentaries on the current music scene and stuff. It's very like it has aspects that are reminiscent of like Eastern medicine, Western illness, Aethiopes. Like the thing about preservation that I've realized is that no two projects are alike.
Right.
He's always on theme completely. Like if you ask him to do a project, he's going to fully commit himself to it. It's not like he gives you a batch of beats that are just like another batch of beats. So I highly recommend it. It's kind of hard to pick out a single track that stands out though, because it's such a whole piece of work. And I've listened to it times, and unfortunately I can't really just be like, listen to this track as a gateway. So we'll move on from that.
Okay.
And we're moving on to Church. We're going to Church.
Church. Oh, yes.
Amazing album that I appreciate more every time I listen to it. I've gotten to the point where I say this is equal to Aethiopes. And people need to start fucking putting some respect on Messiah Music's name.
I was just about to say that. So, yeah, I mean, big ups Messiah Music, not only for this album, but I just want to kind of bring attention to his run that he's gone through. So, Trapdoor, DFC, Future Classic, amazing album. He's also done his those album. He did the album with Blood Money Perez. Is it Secondhand Accounts, which is also amazing.
Really good.
Blood Money Perez is really great rapper.
Blood Money Perez, very. I would say, if you're into Zilla Rocca, he's kind of like on the middle ground between Zilla Rocca and Billy Woods, I would say.
Yeah.
I describe him. So
very, very interesting lyricism from Blood Money Perez. And then also just the fact that Messiah Music has been there since, he was on History One Wolves Over Me, as well as Race Music. He's got production credits all the way back. And I've seen some people being like, who's this guy? And it's like, how are you fans of Armand Hammer and you don't at least have a glance at production credits sometimes,
Markey a little bit, because Jeff Markey was on Race Music and then kind of hung back for a while. Messiah Music has been consistently on their projects. So what the yeah. When I saw that he was doing all of Church, I remember distinctly being at work, just checking the Discord in the bathroom at work, as I do when I'm trying to avoid doing work, and seeing this shit and having to avoid doing the Booker T breakdancing yell real quick. I remember Aaron saying that. I'm like, sorry, what? I'm sorry, what? This comes out in 2 days. We're doing this. What?
Yeah. I love when that shit happens.
Unfucking believable. Yeah. Paraquat is. Billy Woods has a way.
You smoking Newports, man? Let me eat my breakfast. So good. See, that's a line that is fucking hilarious that people need to, pay attention to instead of jumping to conclusions.
One of the things that elevates this, at the very least, makes it equal to Aethiopes is that there are jokes on this. There are very few jokes on Aethiopes. Like Aethiopes, one of the things that makes it intense is that I wouldn't want to say humorless album, but it's a serious album. There are jokes on, to the point where he says at the end, all jokes aside, I miss my God. That's what makes it so devastating in the final run, those final 3 tracks, which, by the way, oh my God. Those final 3 tracks are just ugh.
Is that the best end to a Woods album? It's in the conversation, right?
You got Shrines, where you got Ramses 2 and the Eucharist, I believe. That's Shrine.
Obviously, Hiding Places as well has an amazing ending, but I don't know, just the Polo Rico, to all jokes aside, is so good. And I guess Magdalene is kind of on a different.
Well, that's the only issue I was
talking
about.
Thing.
My only issue is I would switch All Jokes Aside Magdalene, because All Jokes Aside feels like where the album ends.
Yeah. No, I agree.
The way I see it is this is a companion to Aethiopes. And Aethiopes is like the macro, and this is the micro.
Right.
Aethiopes is the lens pulling out and trying to explain how the systems have ruined everybody and the tragedy of everything, and it's the weight of everything on everybody. And this is the micro. These are the littler stories.
Right.
Smaller stories of devastation, but it's also the humor and humanity and everything, which is also the biggest, most devastating stuff is in the smallest stories. And that's why you got Paraquat and Puerto Rico, which are the 2 most just aside from maybe SpongeBob, hardest.
Red Dust.
Jesus God, when he talks about the fucking vending machine and the vape and Puerto Rico, good fucking God, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see his teeth. It wasn't a smile.
The face has details that he uses to accumulate something and just emotionally cripple you.
Mm-hmm. And there's the more mother ad libs, if you listen, the twice as well. Really, really cool. Such an amazing detail. And also the switch from, what is it? Hose in Paradise and Love in Paradise,
God, the way he flips the, I hope there's like, he says Hose in Paradise and you're like, okay, that's cool. Like, he like flips Paradise and then I hope Love in Paradise and I'm crying. All right, well, I'm crying. Now I'm actually actively crying.
I saw someone tweet, I don't know who it was, but they were like, Billy Woods must have just gone through the most like devastating breakup of all time to make all this emotionally crushing music. I'm like, yeah, probably.
I mean, does he go through the album cycle though? Because he also made fucking SpongeBob and but he's also able to always mingle it with humor. Like he makes SpongeBob and then he comes up with Steak Knives after SpongeBob and Steak Knives. The Glengarry Glen Ross joke right after it, which it's like fucking hysterical. So again, best writer going right now, any medium. Like
do we want to take some time to get angry about the Fantano review for this or no?
Okay, so one of the things I wanted to do was rewatch the review, but I was like, I don't want to be super mad, but I'm like, you'll probably do it for me. So, okay, do you want to quote some stuff? Quote some stuff.
I clearly just didn't pay attention to it, as I think is the general thing. He was complaining about like there being too many beat switches, but also like the beat switches are fucking cool.
So there are okay, all right. That's a problem. Why?
And exactly. I don't know. I thought they felt they were disjointed or something. I don't know.
Isn't this just an Armand Hammer album? To which I reply, the part where he talks about his dad dying is that's one of them. There's also the parts where it's always clearly like all personal stories about his like life, and also the fact that it's always like he clearly has like, if you follow his solo career, like thematic elements that he builds albums upon versus Armand Hammer albums where they have collective things they build elements upon. You wouldn't know that though because you never actually listened to Elucid albums. So,
right, exactly. Yeah, has never even reviewed an Elucid album. And also, just while I'm at it, took 10 years to review one Rock Marciano album. But yeah, and another thing as well that I was like, clearly hasn't listened to it, is there's a bit where, this Schism has the Fat Ray feature, and it's the same sample as No Hard Feelings.
Right.
Didn't mention that at all, so it's like, well, if you're such a fan of Aethiopes, how did you miss that part and not mention it? So it's like
back to with a line where he says no hard feelings in it.
Yeah.
In his
apparently, I think I read that the actual beat, like it was just by coincidence that both Messiah Music and Preservation had used that sample. Like it wasn't a calculated thing. It just happened around the same time.
Yeah, it's parallel thought. Like apparently Blockhead for the undercard, Blockhead did not know that Clips had used that for Freedom.
True.
Basket drops. Yeah.
Right.
So
yeah, it happens. It happens. So that review was just it was. I don't want to. Sorry.
Quelle did not really know, and the track.
True. Huh. That's funny too, given that they're both Detroit dudes. But never mind. I don't know. I don't
believe that Quelle. By the way. So
interesting. But yeah, I guess anyway, back to the album. Fuchsia and Green, one of the best hooks on an Armand Hammer track. Agree? Disagree?
The poetic, I agree. And the poetic lyricism on that is very. That strikes me as Billy being influenced by Elucid a little bit in terms of the way he's writing. So,
right. Yeah.
Yeah, I just
Cossack Wedding. With having the sample from the song that him and Mark Hammer have on what's the one after? Oh god, brain's gone blank. Give me a second.
Crap.
It has the same sample as it samples Mark Hammer's verse on the song from Terror Management at the end of it.
He also calls back. That's one where he actually uses the terror. Don't let me he calls. There's one track on here where he, unfortunately, I would want it to be on my lap. I either want to be on my laptop where I have the church PDF on there, or have sent it to myself, and I have done neither because I'm terrible at my job. But there is one track where he says, "Don't let judge how you terror manage." Is that the one where he does that?
It might be, but I could be wrong. I'd have to look into that.
Yeah.
I also actually have the booklet, but it's downstairs.
I should bring that up.
What did you think of the Fat Ray feature? I thought that was again one of those cases where it's like someone that wouldn't fit on paper, but like just plays a really nice part, being slotted on the album.
Yeah, I thought that was really solid. I thought he did a really good job on his feature. It's not my favorite verse on the album by any measure, but I'm also glad, as I'm bringing it up on RYM, I'm glad to see it's bolded at a 3.6, which I was.
Yeah. I don't know. That's pretty good. 3,900. Oh, sorry. So it's in the 5,000s, so it's still pretty safe there, but probably over time will be unbolded, unfortunately.
And Aaron,
I don't know.
Mentioned that Thelonious Martin used the same building picture for his beat tape recently that Billy used for this, because he keeps sending me.
You know who else used this image? Was AM Breakups. I was listening to one of his tapes, and like on the YouTube upload, it had the exact same image. I was like, oh, nice. But a lot of mileage from this great image.
Yeah, it is a great image. It's Billy. Billy has a flawless streak with his album art, and as he does with many things. But Absolutely. In terms of like the album title and the recurring motif, I think he does a great job of bringing it back up over and over without being corny about it. Like the "No Church in the Wild" line. I think that he's just. Something he's always really good about is coming back to a theme, but not beating you over the head with it. Just revisiting a theme, yet not being just heavy-handed with it, yet not forgetting it either. So, Fever Grass, actually. Absolutely. If I had to pick 4 tracks here that I think put this as equal, if not better. If I had to pick 4 tracks that I keep coming back to that make me think this could be equal or better to Aethiopes, which when I first listened to it, I was like, this is great, but I think it's like a companion album to Aethiopes, but not like it's equal or better. And the more I listen to it, I think it's equal or better. Paraquat, Fever Grass, Puerto Rico, all jokes aside. And Fever Grass, with one of those beat switches that annoys that schmuck so much, I think is one of those tracks. Like the hook, the way it builds up in those, again, accumulating details about, and you have stuff about his family, which all the stuff he mentions about his family and mentions all build up to the emotional, just like devastation of Puerto Rico over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just amazing writing as per usual.
Remarkable writing, and you see why he gave you a lyric sheet with this. He wants you to read
Yeah.
Unlike Elucid, I'd rather not give you ever lyric sheets.
Yeah, I mean, at least as far as I'm aware, Elucid doesn't, do DMCA claims if you put his lyrics online.
You got the CD of I Told Bessie, right? He gave you a lyric sheet with that, kind of.
Oh, I don't have that on CD. What is it? Is it like?
And I'll find it for you. It's I will find it for you, and I will actually take a picture of it at some point so Wyatt can put it on screen.
Nice.
A double portion of protection for me and my.
Yep.
Who's the one who holds the secrets? You don't know what to do with it. Nice. I believe in black people.
So
there you go.
I mean, those are all very important lines in the album, to be fair. Yeah. Well, another quite interesting one is the booklet for Dialect's Abandoned Language. It does have lyrics, but you have to hold them in the light a certain way to actually read them.
Oh, that's awesome. Huh.
Yeah, it's really sick. Yeah. Legend.
Oh, that's another episode we could have you on for. Would be the Dialect episode.
Oh, absolutely. And also, I do really want to at some point discuss the link between Dialect and Elucid, because he's definitely influenced by them. And I don't know if it's even been stated or not.
I definitely see that for sure.
Yeah. Actually, I'll tell that story later, but yeah.
Okay.
It's just a brief anecdote from something that happened recently. Amazing album.
Yeah.
I think I might have. Yeah, I think I might have even listened to this maybe more than Aethiopes at this stage.
Well, I think that's another thing that gives it an edge over Aethiopes is that Aethiopes demands to be heard as a full piece. I feel like but it's like it has that again, like why I kept being drawn to the Kendrick Butterfly comparisons is it has that weighty quality to it. I just think it's better at that than Butterfly because again, I think Butterfly has that narcissistic, self-important quality to it. I feel like I'm shitting on Butterfly. I do like the Butterfly. I swear to God, I do. I just think that in a lot of its themes, Billy's just so much better than Kendrick. But I feel like this is like more approachable. I feel like just by nature of being like the more street bound companion to what Aethiopes, the thematic companion to Aethiopes. And I feel like, again, it was designed by design. Like you're supposed to digest Aethiopes for half a year, then get this to reflect upon what Aethiopes was telling you. And then this is the other half.
I mean, it's a similar situation with when you put out Terror Management a few months after the Hiding Places, you know, like two big kind of career statements, and then there's like the companion album after.
An album I still need to revisit because that's the one Woods album I will say I have a 7 that kind of leaves me cold. Aside from the stuff like prior to History Will Absolve Me, another thing I was talking about with Aaron is that aside from the Super Cron stuff, like the early Wood stuff does leave me kind of cold. Like I will say. The Chalice, I actually haven't heard any of that stuff. Have you listened to Super Cron Flight Brothers at all? Yeah, that's what I just said. Aside from
sorry, my bad.
Like,
yeah,
like Indonesia, I like that stuff. I like that stuff quite a bit. But like his solo stuff, like the Chalice and the like, he has a comp album. I think it's called like Hideous Threats and. I know what you mean. Yeah, Cowardly Threat, Hideous Cruelty. Yeah, I feel like that has like all the good stuff from his History Will Absolve Me period. Because I listened to the other albums once, and I'm just like, pretty good. Wouldn't have really checked this guy if I didn't like know History Will Absolve Me was about to happen.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
So. Again, like, you know, Elucid put out The Bible and the Gun, where it's like, this guy's pretty good, but he really likes insulting some certain people a lot, doesn't he?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, so did Rock.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on to...
now that's a transition.
Moving on to piece to Akai Solo, The Soldier. Spirit Roaming.
Yeah. Pretty good. Akai Solo is an interesting artist to me, rapping wise. Every now and then I'll hear a guest verse from him and I'm like, that was really cool. I kind of tune out a little bit to this album, but I've only heard it a handful of times. I need to listen to it a few more, I think.
This one, I really like the intro, and Upper Room is incredible. Like Iron Galaxy before it too a lot, but other than that, Upper Room is great. Upper Room is so good. But, other than that, it's just kind of blends in the background into that sort of, I've listened to a lot of Mike, and I've listened to a lot of Navy Blue, and I've listened to that sort of sound, and it just bleeds together type thing.
I had been wondering about that, if that is just coincidence, or if he is just doing this slum style. Because he's like, he doesn't rhyme the same. He just vocally sounds kind of similar to those dudes.
I mean, it's definitely feels like you've hit some sort of, I don't know what the right word is. Parallel isn't the right word. Sweet spot's not the right word either. But like, he's somewhere in the middle between Mike, Earl, Cannibal Ox.
Yeah, I was also going to say that I actually hear it quite a bit of Vortal Mega and Akai Solo.
Vortal not vast.
Yeah. Because like Vortal would do that thing where he would, I think a lot of the time he would continue freestyling after his verse, and then they'd like use that. And I feel like because Akai Solo has sort of like a rambling style, it just reminds me of Vortal quite a bit.
And I really hate to like kind of disregard this album because I do think it's quite good. I have it as a 7 out of 10. I can't lie, like I've only listened to it through once. And I put Upper Room on a mix, and I've listened to that a lot, and I've listened to Cuddy a lot. I think I'm not a lot. I've listened to Cuddy a few times. I think Cuddy's quite good. Other than that, I've only listened to everything else on this once. And I don't. Think
I really like. Bad. I think Mob Psycho is the second track, and this like as the verse goes on, you can hear like more frustration in his voice, and I think that's like really, really cool.
A problem I have with him is a problem I have with some Denmark stuff where I feel like it's just too monochrome, monotone, whatever. Some of the stuff with Mike again, I really hate to be like that. They sound like Earl, which is just like the most hacky ass criticism, but I hate to say it. You know, feels like something Fantano would say.
Right, yeah.
Not paying attention, which is always, but I don't know. I mean, compared to the rest of the Backwoodz stuff this year, it feels like it didn't stand out as much. But it's still a good album, and I want another shot. And I don't want to discourage people from listening to it. And Upper Room is remarkable. So, like I wanted to say he actually has the best verse on Upper Room.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Out raps Elucid and Billy on that. I don't think it's a sort of you let your little brother win situation. Like I feel like both Billy and Elucid like give full on that, and he still out raps them. So
he's an artist I need to spend more time with because like I like the idea of how he does things, and a lot of the time he does like kind of non-rhyming things, which is like I think if done well is quite cool. So
we'll get
exactly. And did you also notice one of the tracks on this has the same sample as Bardo? Like, it's not played out the same way, but the intro part of Bardo is in that beat as well. I can't remember which one it was though, because again, I just kind of didn't pay as much attention as I wanted to.
I feel like I'm giving this album short shrift, but it did kind of just float by me in some ways. So, but
it's definitely good.
It is good. It is good. I mean, I feel like we're being a little pandering, but it is good.
And like, it's well produced. Sorry. Just going to say, I was glad to see as well that he got an Animos production on there as well, and it's got August for non-preservation. It's got lots of really great production on it.
Yeah, the production. Animos was Iron Galaxy, wasn't he?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, it's again very interesting rapping style.
Right.
Need to give it more listens to really form a more valid opinion on it.
Upper Room's my favorite. The intro is my second favorite. Iron Galaxy's my third favorite. So that makes sense. Animos doesn't work very often. So that was a real out of pocket pick, but need to revisit it. Don't want to discourage other people from listening it, but can't act like I'm not going to sit here. Obviously, I can't talk eloquently about something I've only really heard in full once. So moving on though, we got a Christmas present we didn't expect from Jeff Markey, who came out with the very first Armand Hammer track he was responsible for. He gave us Sports and Leisure on Christmas Day. The first Backwoodz beat tape, although it has several vocal cuts on it. Premrock shows up. We got Def C, Fatboy Sharif, Billy, Shape, Sharif again, Sketch, and Gucci show up. This is great. This is it's just cool to have a Backwoodz beat tape, first of all. It plays to a lot of my interests, 90s sports, the general style of it, the way it mingles, vocals and general theme is like sort of beat tape I like. It's under a half hour. It goes by like a flash. There's nothing bad on here. I think Wood's verse is awesome. Def C's verse is awesome. Sketch's verse is awesome. It's just a nice way to end the year for them. And also, it kind of really, if you listen to Sketch's verse and everything, it really just kind of, it's like a prologue to the Sketch album.
Yeah. And also, having said that, though, the production style on this is actually quite different from on the Sketch album, too. So it really just shows off his versatility. This is I would say, more standard hip-hop instrumental tape in a lot of ways. Not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's more to that format.
A lot more I don't want to say mellow music type, but it's probably the most standard instrumental stuff. I mean, some of the stuff on Church is kind of standard-ish, but this is probably the most standard, like, stone's throw-y thing they put out all year.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, for sure. But yeah, it's just, like you said, good listen, or great listen, rather. All the heavy hitters on it. Cool to see both Def C and Fatboy Sharif on the same song. Well-placed features. It's good bang for your buck kind of deal, you know?
Yeah, you have kind of like a loose-ish, funny Woods feature, like playing with the sports theme. Prem playing with themes too. Like, I won't say it's like, it's as close to like loose and funny as you're going to get out of the label, aside from the Duncecap album. So if you haven't checked this, I would say make like the God Fahim and check it. So
yeah, amen. Yeah. Also, I think just looking at our list, were we going to cover BRB going to charge my toothbrush? Just because it kind of drops around December.
I did put it on the list, and I've completely forgotten everything about it.
That's all good. I did listen to it earlier this week. And it's
Elucid put out a beat tape, and I don't remember anything about it, unfortunately. It was very good. I give it an 8 out of 10. I could just read what I wrote in my review.
Yeah.
But I don't really remember anything about it. I would say check it out.
Similar deal to Searship, where it's a mix of like sound collage, experimental stuff, and then every now and then there'll be like a quote unquote traditional beat, and then like kind of noisy drone stuff as well, which is again I think shows the dialect influence, but that's a discussion for another time perhaps. And yeah, it's just a consistently interesting listen. Half an hour goes by pretty quick. You've got a Elucid verse in the middle as well, I believe, which is really nice. But again, just like this dude's production is really, really impressive. He can do so many interesting styles, and maybe because he hasn't been producing as much recently, but definitely needs to get more credit for that. Like everything else he does.
So Sketch. Oh, yeah. He left nothing for the swim back. In my review, I described this as the Saul Williams self-titled album if Billy Woods was really pissed off and worked in the service industry.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty much, I don't know. I feel like it's almost reductive to just describe. Okay, I want to step back. When was your first experience with Sketch? Like on Iffy Holla on the Armand Hammer album?
I think it was, but then maybe a year or two ago, I did somewhat of a dive and listened to Tomorrow Kings, which he's on a lot. I cut N-Word Rigged Time Machine, and then also his
the Analog.
Analog Tapes music album, which is like fucking mental album. I remember
when I heard him on the Armand album, I was just like,
yeah.
So this is going to be a weird connection to make. There was this one, I believe, Young Roddy album, I think, where there's this one feature where it just felt like somebody who was like a friend who just came off the street and just spit whatever the fuck. And that's kind of the impression out of Sketch. It's like they found somebody off the street who just was spitting their life. And then I found out this dude rapped for like 10 years. That's the impression you get out of him. I feel like that's a cultivated fucking impression, though. Like, he wants you to think that. Because this is a very intelligent dude who can rap on beat and writes all of his shit. He's not like just screaming at. Like, he's not actually like just some fucking drunk asshole.
Right.
It's very cultivated that he, like, if you listen to what he's saying, he's very much, I don't want to say scripting and trying to get a reaction out of you, but there's a thing that he says in his Bandcamp, or that his Bandcamp profile says, is that he's not diluting or not trying to, I don't remember the way he phrases it about like white listeners, but he's very cognizant of how he's going to be received. So I feel that, I don't want to say it's all performance, but he's extremely good at balancing being a rapper with yelling at you.
Right. Yeah. I think I've like kind of referred to it as it's like the songs are both like rapping and also just ranting, right? And it's like he just switches back between the two of them. Sometimes there's more rapping than there is ranting, and then vice versa. It's like
there's like I forget what track it is where he says today's special is, and then he starts yelling about injustices in America, and like there's a construct to it though, and then and that goes in with his whole theme about how he is a service worker who's fed up with the shit, but there's also a literary construct to how the track is constructed. This is not just a guy who came in the studio and is screaming at you, but if you don't really know hip hop, you would just think, I don't know. Again, when I'm talking about the Aethiopes themes, I'm doing a really poor job of explaining this, but it's just I just felt, again, very stupid when I was like, oh man, this is just some guy they pulled off the street. The first time I heard it, I'm like, oh man, this is just some guy who pulled off the street. It's really compelling that he got this out of him. And then I'm like, oh wait, he has a band?
Right.
Oh, this is a musician. I'm an asshole.
Yeah. Well, he there's videos of him doing battle rap as well. So he was doing battle rap in Chicago for quite a while too. So he's pretty deep in the game.
But I think cynical sort of this isn't Little Dicky. This is not some sort of fucking act.
Oh no.
Yeah.
No.
And I think this is also in the same way that Aethiopes is the greatest, the culmination of Woods putting together a comment, a literary statement, and that's a pompous ass thing to say, but you know what I mean. I feel this is probably in the Call Out Culture episode I'm referencing, he said this is his retirement album. So I feel everything he had to say, he pulled into this album.
Mm-hmm.
And Jeff Markey was the best sort of producer for that. In the same way that Musik was the best producer for Church. In the same way that Preservation was the best sort of producer for the Aethiopes.
Right.
You had this sort of guitar squeal on the second track, which I misattribute to having a Channel Zero reference because I got that mixed up with the Alaska album from this year, which, by the way, is an awesome album. If you haven't heard it, Pop Songs for the Apocalypse.
You need to get to that one.
You really do. It's excellent. I have a split track version. I'm not sharing with other people if you need access to that, because I know it's an A/B on Bandcamp. But
right.
But yeah, I think that in terms of the way he structures this, it's intentionally abrasive, but the more you listen to it, there's a lot of humanity to it. Yep. And after the first two tracks, it lets up a lot. The third track, the Posse Cut, reminds me a lot of something of Blues New York or Good to Be Home.
Right. I mean that's because that's him with dudes who are in Tomorrow Kings. I don't know about Solar 5, but and it's them all telling a different story about what it was like to grow up in Chicago. He's got that line, my uncle got shot because that's what happened to uncles back then. All that kind of stuff.
I was actually about to quote that. I was like, that's the warmest track, but then it also has that line.
Yeah.
And it also has a line where it's the summer's beautiful, just expect to go to a funeral.
Right. Yeah.
So it's struck it's still warm, it starts to invite you, but it still braces you in that sort of way. And then it ends with the Western Automatic Music Suite, which has my favorite song of the year in Western Automatic Music Part 2 with him and Woods.
Yeah.
It's just fucking gut stomping.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing where that song's actually very moving, but it's you've got to get through it to really feel that impact. You've got to hear what this man has to say, and then more of this humanity comes across. It's on the song Up to Speed when he's talking about here's something like Legends where he talks about he has something like my grandfather died while his bastard seeds had to handle expressing emotion, something to that extent, right? He has these very personal on the nose moments as well, where it's just shit, man, there's a lot going on here.
And also, I forget which one it is. That might also be Up to Speed, where he's like, and then it's either that or Western Automatic Music Part 1, where he's like, then it's back to work. Then it's back to work.
Yeah. He's good at fucking finding Bob back to work. Yeah. Oh, sorry, that's what he ends it with on Up to Speed. Is he's while his bastard seeds were figuring how to navigate through grief, and then he says, "My family calls me chill." It's like Jesus Christ. Yeah, and but you are right. There is kind of him being provocative, and that's even going back to the New Age Metal Finger. This this song, his album of Analog Tape Dispenser. One of his songs, he's like, he says, "Biggie and Park's deaths didn't teach me shit. I knew that bullets killed people." And then you hear people in the crowd yelling at him and trying to fight him, and he's like, "No, wait, listen to me," and then he keeps talking. So he is very. It's very deliberate that he is quite provocative, and it's some real punch you in your shit side stuff.
They talk about in the Call Out Culture episode that they introduce him as the human microphone. I mean,
right. Yeah.
But
yeah,
he also owns that in a way, not the whole the thing Eric Andre makes fun of when he does that character. "Oh, I'm saying it. Does that offend you?"
Yeah.
I don't think he's that. He has the. I think he's actually subverting that whole thing where he talks about rappers who glorify the whole thing, the whole lifestyle. Where he's like, we would have traded that all in for a tire swing,
right?
And then the other thing, don't whatever the thing about your idols, don't kill your idols, let them crash on your couch.
Yeah. I love that one. That opening track has just so many quotables. What is it? Not enough white girls with Pepsi cans to shield the whole movement. Yeah.
This is just one after the other, just fucking baseball bat to the face in the best sort of way. I can't recommend this enough. It's again, I feel like you have an arc that starts with the Duncecap album softly introducing these topics, and then you end with a blowtorch in the sketch album.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I really feel like it was just a calculated arc, and I don't mean that in a cynical sort of way. I don't think anything it does is by accident. Nothing these dudes do, nothing this label does is by accident. So,
yeah. And another thing about this album as well is it's only 9 tracks, and it is so much. Every track is has such a presence,
zero wasted oxygen, zero wasted motion.
And I really like how in the last 3 tracks he just pretty much stops rhyming.
Oh yeah.
It's there's no traditional rhyme schemes really. There might be one by coincidence as it goes on. It's pretty amazing. Who else can do that?
I don't need to adhere to the conventions of rap music anymore. Fuck y'all.
No, exactly. There's enough rhymes in the very first song that it's we can tell you can spit. You go off, man. Have at it. What did you think about the fact that
get away with in Black Thought and
So what do you think? What do you think he is trying to say there?
Well, I think it's more about the idea that this guy's just he shows up and it's he has such weight as a conscious rapper and whatever. But he says also with the thing about the laugh track too. It's don't forget this dude gets a paycheck from Comcast and he's on Fallon. Don't forget that this dude is still an employee. I'm an employee too. I'm a service worker. We're all just workers. That's what I got out of that.
Okay. What did you think about the quote-unquote Premrock feature where it's just literally Premrock talking in the background about mixing drinks?
I thought that was I thought Premrock forgot to show up Snoop Dogg on the Gucci Man the Gooch feature. That's what I did. I didn't know what happened with it.
But if you listen to the Call Out Culture episode about this album, he does say that him and Premrock did tend to bar together. They worked with each other. So
I do know that. Obviously from Premrock's he's had mentioned working in a bar. I figured there was something to do with and on the Wasted Ink feature, then I figured there was some kind of connection in that way. So yeah. I figured that's how they knew each other. I've not gotten that far in the episode, unfortunately. So thanks for spoiling us.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Do you one thing on track on this that I kind of like, I kind of can't really tell what he's getting at is the river. Like, what is the kind of main narrative there? Do you know what he's talking about?
I would have to consult a lyric sheet to. Yeah, that's a little abstract for me, for him especially too, because he's not somebody who's particularly abstract. So I don't really know what the end point of that is. Yeah, I love the beat on it though. Right. And track 2 are the 2 times I think that Markey is really like super somewhere else, I would say. Yeah. Like, a lot of the stuff seems kind of great, although everything on here is way more, I would say, avant, for lack of a less just term, than everything on Sports and Leisure. Like you said, Sports and like we kind of got at, like you didn't say, like we kind of got at overall collectively. Sports and Leisure is more of a stone's throwy type thing. This is very much noisier than most of the stuff we've talked about. Like some of the stuff on Aethiopes is, I would say, a little left field. This is the most left field thing we've talked about overall. Yeah, which suits Sketch's approach. It's close to a analog thing I can't really say the name of. Yeah, in terms. Yeah, the like first track, the title track it sounds like it could be like an old LP beat, and then Badly Drawn Hero. You know how in radio music there's the whole thing where people are always like anything that's vaguely industrial hip hop, they'll be like, this sounds like Death Grips. It's Dalek, or Dalek.
Yeah, but like people are going to say that Badly Drawn Hero sounds like a Death Grips song on radio music. I mean, like, because of the way the beat kind of breaks down and all the crazy obnoxious shit going on.
I made the Public Enemy Channel Zero reference, and I think because I got it confused with the track on the Alaska album. I think that he might be making an abstract Channel Zero reference on it, because he makes on America, like he's kind of referencing watching TV or whatever. I think it's kind of Bomb Squad-y, actually.
Yeah. I
don't know. But overall, I feel like this is way out of their normal wheelhouse. As having listened to all of Markey's beat tapes since, I think that this is not what he normally does.
Yeah, and also I think the album overall is just like it's the perfect length. Like New Age Middle Finger is amazing, but it's kind of similar to Fantastic Damage, where there is just so much to digest that it does get like it's pretty exhausting after a while. Where this is like 9 tracks. 34 minutes is so precise for this kind of style.
I feel like it kind of comes back to, again, I didn't listen to clearly not as much as you, the Call Out Culture episode about the retirement. I feel like if Sketch really did at some point that this was his last will and testament as a rapper, he wanted to make this a succinct statement, as succinct as somebody like could make it. So, and that's why Western Automatic Music was what it was. Yeah. Like, I think he's like, this is the last thing I want to say on record. Here's how it's going to sound. Like, this is the last thing you're going to hear from me. Fuck off. So,
yeah.
But, what does sound kind of industrial and avant-garde would be taking it back 10 years ago, Cult Favorite.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Just before we move there, though, I just want to say 2 things about Sketch 185. So, first of all, do listen to...
Will you? I thought that was a good transition.
It was a really good transition. But just want to shout out 2 things. Listen to those who are listening, do listen to New Age Middle Finger with Analog Tape Dispenser. And they also have another album under a different name called War Church. And it's called Gunship Diplomacy, and that's from 2016. So there's more Sketch material out there than might be apparent, as well as the Tomorrow King stuff. And apparently there's another Tomorrow Kings album in the works too. So look out for that.
Okay, now I'm excited. Yeah. Good shit. All right. So that was worth shitting on. But so, what does sound pretty industrial and cold is the group Cult Favorite, which predates this by about 10 years, which you did get to actually ask member of Armand Hammer of Backwoodz Records Elucid about when you saw Armand Hammer live in
Correct.
person.
Yes.
Which is how we're going to end this episode. Live record.
Yeah.
And discussion of.
Mm-hmm. So it was actually quite a frustrating show, not because of them, but because the sound was kind of garbage for like the first maybe 15, 20 minutes, where it was far too much bass. And the thing that was really getting on my nerves was that Elucid's mic was too low. And I was like, why is this happening to Elucid? Like, people ignore him enough as it is, and now his mic is too low. So I was getting like kind of shitty about that. And I think part of it is because like, you know, it's a hard job being a sound person, obviously. And I think that like probably the preset used for hip hop shows you need a different preset for the kind of production that Armand Hammer go over, and that includes drumless production as well. So yeah, it was pretty like bassy and boomy, and it was kind of distracting at first. But in terms of their actual performance, like they were like amazing. They opened with well, the thing about their performance as well is that like a lot of it was more so just them doing solo tracks than songs as Armand Hammer. So they opened with Spelling, or Elucid did Spelling, and then Woods did the first two tracks from Aethiopes, and then they started to do songs where they're on the same song together. They did Barbarians, which is the one from Rome that was produced by JPEG Mafia, and you know how there was like they had a bit of a slight beef about that. Him and Elucid had a falling out, but before the track, Woods said peace to what's his name, JPEG Mafia. So yeah, their set was like really great. They didn't really do anything from like, I guess, prior to that song. It was pretty much all stuff that has come out within the last like 2 or 3 years. Oh, sorry, maybe 4 or 5 years, because there were songs from like Paraffin as well that they did. I'm trying to remember what they closed with. Oh, SpongeBob was amazing live because people were doing the "motherfucker, you promised" as like as the callback, call and response.
Oh God.
Yeah. And they did an encore. They did Puerto Rico as the encore, which was like really, really great. Yeah. And at that point in time, people had At that point in time, people were kind of like backed off a bit, so I was like way up the front for encore for Puerto Rico. They did all sorts of shit. A few things from Haram. They also, Elucid did one of the later songs on Save Yourself, which was really cool to hear. One that's got like a really intricate flow, which was like quite nice to hear in a live setting, even though his microphone wasn't quite loud enough. Yeah, but if you do get a chance to see them, they're like pretty amazing live, and they're not missing anything. Like, you know, they're getting all their lyrics down and everything like that, and just like a very interesting presence. I took a friend with me who wasn't really familiar with them, and he was like, afterwards was like, yeah, they were like, it was kind of like watching these like prophets of the apocalypse, like live on stage. And at the end of
prophecies.
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, I should move on. But yeah, at the end of the show, they had a merch table. So I was in line, and I had exchanged some brief words. I was wearing my Dialect T-shirt as well. So I went up and I was, shook Elucid's hand and was like, "Oh, I've been a fan since Cult Favorite." And then Woods was like, "Oh, that's taking it back." And I was like, "Okay." And then I was like, "I've got to ask, is there like more like Cult Favorite or more stuff of AM breakups?" And he was like, "Well, I don't know. Like, I don't know if we've got anything else coming out." But we do have, we are doing something for the 10-year anniversary of The Mad Men Only. And then, like, a day or two later, it showed up on Bandcamp. So I like to think I gave them that nudge to put it out, but I don't think I did. But, yeah, just an interesting coincidence. And, yeah, Woods was like, "Oh, and you're wearing a Dialect T-shirt." So that was real cool. So obviously they're fans. And, yeah, bought some merch. I'm currently wearing my Haram T-shirt, which is a medium, so it's a bit small on me, but I had to cop something, and also got Church on CD with the alternative cover. So yeah, it was sick.
Yeah, I'm wearing my as people who listened to the Haram episode, the No Ganja No Moreno t-shirt that got me in so much trouble with the PA post office. The chick who wore the face was not actually a face mask, and they didn't understand how the email worked. But so I guess we can end this talking about the favorite reissue, Sway Masses. This came out. Yeah. They somehow managed to make a really depressing and desolate album sound way more depressing and desolate. Although it really doesn't have any material from for Man Only on it. Like, it's mostly B-side stuff from the pre-release material, some dub plates. I actually like this better than, I only listened to it once when it dropped last week and a little bit in pieces since. I think I like it better than For Man Only. But just because, I don't know, it sounds a little more paranoid somehow, which is amazing to me that they can make some. I don't know. I need to listen to all their stuff more because I think I underrated it at the time. I think that they had a really short burst of output that I was not particularly appreciative. Not particularly properly appreciative of. Because, this is really good though. Yeah, I really.
When I saw the track list and I saw that the first track was 6.5 minutes, I was like, oh yeah, this is what I've been waiting for. But yeah, I don't really. So from what I can tell, these songs weren't on anything else, were they? They were just kind of in the stash, and they've now put them out.
Well, I think they said one was like a 2023 version, so I think one edit from like that they just. But otherwise, I think it's just stuff that was like hanging around more or less.
And then Jeff Markey's got co-production on the closing track as well, so that might be more recent, but I'm not sure.
Right. But yeah, might be, might not be, considering that, he's been around them since, and I think that the first Armand Hammer tape that he worked on was around that time.
Right.
So, but yeah, I feel like this has the same paranoid, suffocating quality as like something like the Dalek for Gods and Griots, or I don't know. It's very hard to find something comparable to this stuff, and honestly, and my review does not do their initial release justice either. Like, I don't know what I was on when I said the initial instrumentals lacked character, because they don't. But I think this is even better in terms of, like, as a companion piece, at least.
Yeah.
I think they take all the really relevant stuff, because they released a bunch of stuff to hype it up. And I think this compiles it all really nicely into a coherent release.
Right. Yeah. I think maybe a comparison point is maybe some like of the noisier kind of like Def Chuck's era LP stuff as well. I think there's a bit of that in some of these instrumentals. Like I think Walking Wounded it sounds quite like LP inspired. Actually, Sphinx and I, before they got the band Hammer, were working on a list that was like songs that like are similar to that kind of LP production style. So there's definitely stuff on here that would fit on that list. But alas, because they've been banned, I don't know when we'll see that. But really, really good songs on here. There is a feature from someone. Have you heard of do you know who Teddy Faley is on track 5?
I don't. That was the first time I saw his production credit, and then I actually got a bit of a chiding from a shout out to friend of the pod, One Man Army on RYM, because I just left it in the track listing when I posted it initially on the database, because I was just like lazy, I guess, with the better RYM thing, because he didn't have an RYM listing. I don't know who that guy is.
Right.
I don't think he has any other credits. I don't know who that guy is.
Yeah, I just looked him up, and he apparently put out an album in 2022, which has one review from OG Nick Marsh. But his verse is really, really dope. He has a sick verse on this tab.
Nick Marsh, who I believe we have lined up for the Lupe app along with Disney.
Oh, awesome.
But, yeah.
Oh, wicked. Cool. Very exciting. Hopefully. But yeah.
I don't think we're in danger of Lupe putting out an album this year. That's one artist I don't think we're in danger of dropping an album on our head. But who knows? Because he did that one album in like 4 days last year.
Yeah.
Much like Cap did an album in 6 hours, and I'm sure it was really good.
Oh boy! Did you hear the Capadonna album with? Was it called like African Killer Bees or something? And it had the real ridiculous.
But we are doing. That's a great transition to shilling the next episodes we'll be doing with Mars Bars about the Wu-Tang Clan coming soon to a podcast near you. But
it's called African Killer Bees, by the way.
Yeah, very creative out of our favorite rapper Capadonna. But I'm
looking forward to that one.
I can't believe that Capadonna did an album in 6 hours. I'm so terrified to hear. I mean, I heard the first track. He rapped very slowly on it. Very slowly.
Shout out to Kappa, man. What a trooper.
Cap with a cab driver, drop you off in the middle of fire.
Yeah, exactly. It's the return of Bin Laden.
Because they didn't have Waze back then. So you could just wherever the fuck.
Oh, what an absolute.
All right. So speaking of dropping you off wherever the fuck, we're going to drop this podcast off wherever the fuck. What is the best track from this Backwoodz run?
Oh, Jesus. Well, for me, it's Betamax from I Told Bessie. That's my most played one.
I'm going to say Western Automatic Music Part 2 or Paraquat.
Yep. Also, good calls. Oh, Puerto Rico, maybe.
Puerto Rico is emotionally devastating to the point where I can't listen to it that often. It's probably objectively the best track, but I can't listen to it that often. I think Paraquat is impressive because he makes sounding exhausted sound so dope.
Yeah.
And the beat switch.
Yeah.
Fuck Anthony fan.
Yeah, real talk.
Right.
Yeah, so I'd say Betamax, but you've got a whole wealth of things to choose from here, folks. So if you are going through this discography from the past year and a bit, you're in for a good time. Well, a good, it's been quite bad lately, but you're gonna have a good time. So
it has been quite bad lately. Hopefully it will get better. Spoiler alert, it won't. But it will next time when we talk about Ka. Thoughtfoul, as always, been a pleasure. This has been Living Off Borrowed Time. Our intro music is by Yoon Classic and this guy you might have heard about over the course of the past 2 hours, Billy Woods, Borrowed Time outro. And our outro music, as always, is Stagnated Pace by Can Kick. Peace out, guys.
Peace.
It ain't gonna never stop. 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 It ain't gonna never stop.
Time will tell. Time is yet to be conquered by man. But when the time is right, perhaps the greatest revelation of all time will dawn upon us.